They left her bleeding on a battlefield soaked in the blood of wolves who had never loved her. Her own pack. Her own blood. They looked her in the eye and walked away. An Omega was worth less than the dirt under their boots. But when the moon turned red that night, something inside Elara Thorne didn't die. It woke up. And when the Alpha King's shadow fell across her broken body, the world she knew ended. If you want to see the girl, they threw away, rise to burn them all. Stay until the end. Like this video, and drop your city in the comments so I know you're watching. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. It came down in slow gray sheets over the Blackthorn Pack's territory, the kind of rain that didn't clean anything, just soaked into the wood of the old lodges and rotted them from the inside. The kind of rain that made the whole forest smell like wet iron and something dying underneath it. Elara Thorne was on her knees behind the kitchen house, scrubbing a cast iron pot with a rag that had been a shirt once. Her shirt. Before Mira had torn it off her back a week ago and told her Omegas didn't deserve cotton. She didn't cry about it. She hadn't cried about anything in a long time. Her fingers were cracked along the knuckles, split open from lye soap in cold water, and every time she moved them, the skin tore a little wider. She kept scrubbing anyway. If the pot wasn't clean by sundown, Cook Hannah would strap her across the back of the legs with a wooden spoon, and last time Hannah did that, Elara couldn't walk right for 2 days. Thorne! She didn't look up. Looking up was a mistake. Looking up was the thing that always made it worse. Thorne? I said your name. She set the rag down. Slow. Careful. Then she raised her eyes. Mira Vale was standing at the edge of the kitchen porch with her arms crossed over her chest, and 2 of her friends were behind her, both taller, both grinning. Mira was the daughter of a senior beta, and she had the kind of face people wrote songs about in this pack. Sharp cheekbones, black hair braided tight against her skull, mouth always set like she was about to laugh at you. She usually was. Alpha Garrick wants you at the stone ring, Mira said, before dark. Elara's stomach dropped through the floor. The stone ring was where punishments happened, where challenges happened, where wolves who broke pack law got their throats opened on a flat gray rock that had been there longer than any of them had been alive. Why? Elara said. Her voice came out rough. She hadn't used it much today. Mira tilted her head. Because he said so. Is that enough of a reason for you, or do you need me to beat it into your back too? One of the girls behind her snickered. Elara swallowed. I'll go. Of course you will. Mira stepped down off the porch and walked closer, and Elara felt her shoulders pull up around her ears without meaning to. Mira smelled like pine oil and wolfsbane soap, the fancy kind, the kind the senior families got. You always do what you're told. That's the only thing you're good for. She reached down. For a second, Elara thought Mira was going to hit her, and she braced for it, closed her eyes, tightened her jaw, the way she'd taught herself to do when she was 8, and her own mother had slapped her for the first time. But Mira didn't hit her. Mira just picked the rag up out of the bucket, wrung it out in a lazy twist, and let the gray water splash down over Elara's face and neck and into the collar of her shirt. There, Mira said. Now you're clean enough to see the alpha. The girls laughed. Elara sat on her knees in the mud and didn't move until she heard their boots go back up the porch steps and the kitchen door slam shut behind them. Then she let the breath out of her lungs like she'd been holding it for a year. Her hands were shaking. That was the part that made her angriest. Not the rag, not the laughing, the shaking. She pushed herself up off the ground. Her left knee popped. She was 19 years old and her knees popped when she stood up because she slept on the floor of the pantry and her body had forgotten what a bed was. She walked. The Blackthorn compound stretched out across a shallow bowl of pine forest, a ring of long houses and storage sheds, and a big central lodge where the alpha and his mate held court. The stone ring was past all of that, at the north edge, where the trees thinned out and the ground turned to exposed granite shelves that had been worn smooth by 1,000 years of ceremony and 1,000 years of blood. Wolves stepped out of her way as she walked through the compound. Some of them spat. Some of them just looked at her the way you'd look at a stray dog with a bad limp. Not hateful, just annoyed that it was still alive. A boy named Wren, maybe 10 years old, ran up next to her with a handful of wet pine needles and threw them at the side of her face. They stuck to her cheek. He laughed and ran away before she could say anything. She didn't say anything, anyway. Saying something was how you got your ribs kicked in. Elara Thorne had been born an Omega, in a pack that had no place for omegas. Some packs valued them. Some packs said omegas were the glue that held a bloodline together, soft-handed and gentle, good with children and with the sick and with the old wolves whose memories were going. Some packs treated their omegas like something sacred. Blackthorn was not one of those packs. Alpha Garrick Blackthorn believed in strength. He believed in teeth. He believed that a wolf who couldn't fight was a wolf who ate food somebody else could have eaten. And the goddess, he would never say it out loud, but everyone knew he thought it. The old powers had made a mistake when they let omegas exist at all. Elara's mother had died in childbirth. Her father had looked at the baby in the midwife's arms, seen what she was, and walked out of the longhouse without saying a word. She'd been raised by whoever the pack decided owed a favor that month. She'd been raised by nobody. And now Alpha Garrick wanted her at the stone ring before dark. She'd known this day was coming. She'd known it the way you know a storm is coming, not by any one thing, but by the way everything around you goes quiet in a specific way. Last week, a scout had come back with news. The Ironmaw pack was pushing south. They wanted the old silver mines in Blackthorn territory, and they were going to take them. There was going to be a battle. There was always going to be a battle. And Blackthorn was short on bodies. The stone ring was crowded when she got there. Maybe 60 wolves, all the fighting age betas and the few alphas the pack had, and a scattering of the senior families in their good leather. Garrick was standing on the central slab with his arms crossed. He was a big man, not tall exactly, but thick through the shoulders and the neck, with a gray-streaked beard and eyes the color of cold lake water. His mate Corinne stood just behind him, hands folded, face like a knife. Elara's father was in the crowd. She saw him. He didn't look at her. "Thorn," Garrick said when he saw her. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. "Come up." She climbed the 3 worn stone steps onto the slab. Her legs felt like water. Garrick looked her up and down, slow. "You know why you're here," he said. "No, Alpha." Her voice was small. She hated how small it was. "I don't?" "Don't lie to me, girl." "I'm not lying, Alpha." A muscle moved in his jaw. He was used to wolves flinching when he used that tone, and she was flinching. She could feel her own body doing it. But she was also telling the truth, and some part of him must have heard that, because he didn't hit her. He turned to the crowd instead. "Ironmaw crosses the river in 4 days," he said, loud enough to carry. "Maybe 3. Their alpha, Kale Ironmaw, has committed a force of 200. We have 96 fighters." A low murmur. "We cannot lose the mines. Without silver, we cannot trade. Without trade, we do not eat through the winter. Without the mines, we are not a pack. We are a collection of mouths." He paused. "We will need every wolf who can hold a blade. We will also need—" His eyes came back to her. "What the old ways call a settling." Elara's blood went cold. She knew what a settling was. Every wolf knew. It was an old tradition, older than Blackthorn itself. Before a battle you could not win, you took your weakest wolf and you laid them down on the battlefield the night before, at the place of the coming fight, as a kind of offering, a weight thrown into the scales. Some packs used animals. Blackthorn had stopped using animals a long time ago. "No," Elara said, and she didn't even know she was going to say it until the word was out of her mouth. Garrick's head turned a quarter inch. "What did you say?" Her throat closed. She forced it open. "I said no, Alpha." You could have heard a pine cone fall. Corinne made a sound behind Garrick, somewhere between a laugh and a hiss. "The Omega has a mouth," she said. "How novel." "I'm not—" Elara's hands were shaking again. She curled them into fists at her sides. "I haven't done anything. I've served this pack my whole life. I've cleaned your pots and I've washed your dead, and I've never once— This isn't punishment." Garrick's voice was almost gentle, and that was the worst part. "This is use. You are the weakest wolf in this pack, Elara Thorn. You have no mate. You have no bonded kin who know offspring. You have no bonded kin who will grieve you. You are, by every measure that matters, worth less than any other wolf I could choose. Do you deny it?" She wanted to deny it. She opened her mouth to deny it, and nothing came out, because she couldn't. Her father was in this crowd. She looked for him again. She found him. He was staring at the ground. "Father," she said. It came out like a child's voice. He didn't look up. "Father, please." Nothing. Something cracked inside her chest. Not broke, cracked the way ice cracks when the first warm day of spring hits it. A long, fine line running through something that had seemed solid a moment ago. Alpha. A new voice from the edge of the crowd. A young beta named Torin, who'd been kind to her exactly twice in her life, which was twice more than anyone else. Alpha with respect. The old rites were abandoned for a reason. If the other packs hear we're doing a settling, they will hear we are willing to do what is necessary to win, Garrick said flatly, and they will remember it. Torin didn't say anything else. Nobody did. Garrick turned back to Elara. Tomorrow at dawn, he said, you will walk with the column to the river fields. You will be given no weapon. You will be laid upon the stone at the center of the battlefield at dusk. The old words will be spoken over you. You will be left there through the night. He paused. If the goddess wills it, you will be dead by morning, and our wolves will fight on ground that has been paid for. If the goddess does not will it, well, a small, thin smile. Then we will have a living offering to present to the Iron Maw, and perhaps they will find that amusing enough to parley. Elara's legs gave out. She didn't fall exactly. She just sat down, hard, on the stone slab, like her strings had been cut. Her ears were roaring. Say yes, Elara, Corinne said softly. Make it dignified. Elara looked up at her. She had never once, in 19 years, looked Corinne Blackthorne in the eye. She did now. No, she said. Corinne's face went white. Bind her, Garrick said. Two betas came up the stone steps and took her by the arms. She didn't fight them. There was no point in fighting them. She weighed 90 pounds soaking wet, and they were each twice her size, and she had never been taught to throw a punch because Omegas weren't taught things like that in Blackthorn. But as they dragged her down the steps, she turned her head and she found her father in the crowd one more time. He was looking at her now. His face was wet, he was crying, and he still didn't do anything. That was the part she thought about later. Not the dragging, not the rope, not the cold floor of the holding shed where they put her for the night with no food and no water and no blanket, her father's wet face, and how he did nothing. That was the night something in Elara Thorne started to change. They came for her before dawn. She hadn't slept. You didn't sleep on the last night of your life. Or she couldn't anyway. She sat with her back against the wall of the shed and she watched a spider build a web in the corner for 6 hours straight, and when the door opened and gray morning light came in, she actually said goodbye to the spider in her head, because the spider had been the only thing that had kept her company. 2. Betas walked her out. Torin was one of them. He wouldn't meet her eyes. Torin, she said. Don't, he said. Torin, just tell me. Will it hurt? He stopped walking. The other beta, older, said, Keep moving, boy. Will it hurt? She said again. Her voice was steady now. She didn't know where the steadiness had come from. It was like somebody else had slipped into her body in the night, someone calmer, someone with ice in her veins. I just want to know. Torin swallowed. The cold will take you first. You won't feel much. By the time the wolves come in the morning, you'll already be... Thank you, she said. He flinched like she'd hit him. They walked her out to the column. 50 fighters in leather and iron, standing in the pre-dawn fog with their breath steaming. Garrick was at the head on his big gray horse. He didn't look at her when she was brought up. None of them looked at her. The march took most of the day. Nobody gave her water. Nobody spoke to her. She was walked in the middle of the column with her wrists tied in front of her and a rope leash on her throat like a dog. Her feet started bleeding in the first hour. She had no boots, because Omegas didn't get boots, and after a while she stopped feeling them at all. The battlefield was a wide, flat plain where 2 rivers met. In the middle of it was a big, flat, weathered stone, gray-green with lichen, maybe 12 feet across. The settling stone. It had been used for other things, 1,000 years ago. Nobody in living memory could remember what. They took her to it at sundown. The sky was the color of an old bruise, yellow at the horizon, purple above, and a strip of dark bloody red running through the middle of it like something had cut the evening open. The fog had come back. It smelled like stagnant water and pine rot and something else. Something underneath. Something that smelled almost like burning, though nothing was on fire for miles. They laid her on the stone. They cut her wrists free. They didn't want her to die with her hands bound. That wasn't how the old rites worked. Garrick stood over her. His face in the red dusk was unreadable. "Elara Thorn," he said, "daughter of Kellen Thorn, Omega of the Blackthorn line. By the old bindings and the older law, I give your breath and your blood to the ground beneath us, that it may drink its fill, and that our wolves may walk to morning on earth that has already been paid. If there is a mercy in the world, let it find you. If there is not—" He looked away, briefly. "Then the world was never yours to begin with." He turned. He walked off the stone. The column turned with him, all 50 of them, and they marched away into the fog, and inside of 10 minutes she could not hear them anymore. She was alone. She lay on her back on the stone, and she watched the sky turn black. Stars came out one at a time. She had never seen so many stars. In the compound there was always lamplight, and the tree line cut the horizon up into pieces. But out here on the plain the sky was everything. An enormous black bowl full of cold white fire, and for a long time she just looked at it and felt very small and very calm. Then the cold started. It came up through her back first from the stone, a deep, patient cold, the kind that didn't announce itself. Her fingers went numb, then her toes, then her lips. She started to shiver in long, full-body waves that made her teeth clack against each other so hard she bit the inside of her cheek and tasted blood. She thought about her mother. She'd never known her mother, but she thought about her anyway. Tried to build a face out of nothing, tried to imagine a woman who would have held her. She thought about Torin's wet eyes. She thought about her father crying and doing nothing. And something in her got angry. Not the kind of angry she'd been before. Not the small, bitter, tired angry of a wolf who had been stepped on for 19 years. Something else. Something that started in the middle of her chest and spread outward like a slow, warm ink, pushing back against the cold, pushing back against the stone, pushing back against the whole enormous, unfair shape of what had been done to her. "No," she said out loud. Her voice cracked on it. "No." The word went out across the plain, and she half expected it to come back as an echo, but it didn't. It just went out and kept going, and the night swallowed it. She sat up. She didn't know she could sit up. Her arms shouldn't have had the strength, but she was sitting up on the stone with her bare feet hanging off the edge, and her breath steaming and her hands trembling, not from cold now, from something else. And she was looking at her own palms, and she was thinking, "I am not going to die here. I am not going to lie down and be a gift to people who never loved me. I am not going to give them that." And something inside her, something that had been sleeping for a very, very long time, heard her. The first thing she felt was her scar. It was a thin silver line, an inch long, at the base of her neck on the left side. She had had it her whole life. She didn't know where it came from. Nobody did. Not the midwives, not her father, not the old women who had raised her in shifts. She had been born with it. It started to warm. Not hot, not painful, just a slow spreading warmth, the way a cup of tea warms your hand through the cup. It spread down into her collarbone and up along her jaw, and then, like a door opening somewhere, it spread inward, into her chest, into her ribs, into the long, cold, empty space under her heart. And something in that empty space moved. "Oh," she said. Quiet. She didn't have a word for what was happening. Nobody had ever told her about this. But some part of her, some old part, some part older than she was, older maybe than Blackthorn, older than the stone she was sitting on, some part of her recognized it. Recognized her. A voice, without sound, inside her head. "There you are." Her eyes went wide. The stone beneath her began to warm. Not the stone, her blood warming the stone from the inside out, like something had flipped a furnace on under her ribs. The lichen under her palms darkened from gray-green to almost black. The fog around the stone, she noticed now, had pulled back. There was a clear circle of night around her, maybe 20 feet across, and the fog was against its edge, like a wall of dirty cotton that couldn't get in. She held up her hand. There was something on her skin. In the starlight, it looked like thin black lines. Lines she had never seen before. Lines that had not been there this morning, climbing up the inside of her wrist and vanishing under her sleeve. They moved, faintly, the way ink moves when you drop it in water. They were not tattoos. They were not veins. They were writing. She couldn't read it. Nobody in Blackthorn could have. It was in a language that hadn't been spoken aloud in a long, long time, and it was writing itself onto her skin from the inside out. And every time a new mark formed, she felt a tiny, bright jolt somewhere deep in her chest, like a wick catching. "What are you?" she whispered. To her own hand, to her own blood, to whatever was waking up. "Yours," the voice said. "I have always been yours, but they only ever made you forget." She started to cry. She hadn't cried in years. She had not cried when her father had turned his face away. She had not cried when Mira had wrung the dirty water over her face. She had not cried when they had tied her wrists that morning. She cried now, sitting on a stone in the middle of a battlefield, with her blood warm and her skin righting itself, and the fog pulled back in a circle around her and the stars burning cold overhead. She cried because she had thought she was nothing. She had thought it her whole life, and she had been wrong. She didn't hear him arrive. That was the part that frightened her later, that a man of his size could cross the open plain in the dark and come within 15 feet of her without her hearing a single footstep. But then, he wasn't really a man, not in the way her pack had used the word. She noticed him because the air changed. It went heavier, not colder, not warmer, denser, like the night had put weight on itself. The markings on her arms stopped moving. The warm thing in her chest went very still, the way a wild animal goes still when something bigger has entered the clearing. She looked up. He was standing at the edge of her circle. He was tall, unreasonably tall, taller than Garrick, taller than anyone she had ever seen. He wore a long black coat that came almost to his boots, and under it a black leather jerkin with some kind of silver clasp at the throat. His hair was dark and cropped close on the sides, and a little longer on top, and it was wet from the fog. His face was, she didn't have a word for it, sharp. Beautiful the way a blade is beautiful, not handsome, not kind. A face that had been carved for other purposes. His eyes, in the starlight, were the color of hot iron. Alpha. Alpha King. Her body knew it before her mind did. Every wolf in her skin, every cell of Omega blood in her body knew it, and she should have been on her face. She should have been on her knees with her forehead to the stone. Every piece of training she had ever been given told her to drop, and she didn't. She didn't drop. She sat on the stone and she looked up at him and she did not look away. He didn't speak for a long moment. He was looking at her arms, at the marks. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and rough, like a stone being dragged across another stone. "Who left you here?" Elara's mouth was dry. "My pack." "Name." "Blackthorn." Something moved across his face, not a smile, something colder. "Blackthorn," he repeated. "And your name, little wolf?" "Elara." "Elara what?" "Elara Thorn." A beat. I don't have a pack name anymore, I don't think." He was quiet. He walked forward, into her circle, and the fog let him. She saw it part for him, the way it had not parted for anything else all night. He stopped at the edge of the stone, and he looked down at her, and she had to crane her neck up to meet his eyes. And for some reason she was not afraid of him. She should have been afraid of him. Her body was telling her, this one could kill you with one hand. Her body was telling her, this is the deepest alpha you have ever been within a mile of. Her body was telling her, run. She didn't run. "Stand up," he said. I don't think I can." "Stand up, Elara Thorn." She stood up. She didn't know how. Her legs shouldn't have worked, but they did. She stood on the stone in her bare, bleeding feet, and she was nearly a foot shorter than him, and the top of her head didn't even reach his shoulder, and he looked down at her like she was the most interesting thing he had seen in 100 years. "Your neck," he said. She touched the scar without thinking. "That mark," he said quietly, "is not a cut. It's just a scar. I've had it since I was born." "No." His iron eyes were very steady. "You have not. You have worn it since you were born. There is a difference." The marks on her arm flickered, once, like something acknowledging being looked at. "Do you know what is happening to you?" he said. "No." Her voice was a whisper. I thought I was dying, and then I wasn't, and then something Something woke up. She nodded. Yes. He was silent for a long time. Then, almost to himself, of course she did. Of course she was here. Who are you? He looked at her then, really looked at her, and she saw his jaw shift, and for the first time she thought she saw something in him that wasn't ice. Something warmer and much, much more dangerous. My name, he said, is Ronan Vale. They call me the Alpha King of the Northern Reach. I have been looking for something for a very long time, Elara Thorn. He paused. I did not expect to find it on a settling stone in a blackthorn field, half dead, and talking to a spider in its head all night. Her breath caught. How did you? I could hear you. From where? From very far. The air between them was humming. She could feel it in her teeth. They'll come back, she said. Her voice was shaking again, but for a different reason now. At dawn, the blackthorns. They'll march through here and they'll find me alive and they will not. They will, Elara. He said her name like it was a whole sentence. They will not. She stopped. He stepped up onto the stone with her. He was close enough now that she could smell him. Clean wind, cold steel. Something underneath that was animal and hot and made the marks on her arm shiver. He looked at her wrists, at the rope burns, at the cut on her cheek where a beta's backhand had split it yesterday. His face didn't change, but something in the air around him went, briefly, very black. Who struck you? He said. It doesn't matter. It matters. A girl named Mira, and a boy named Ren, and a woman named Hannah, and the Alpha Garrick, and my father once when I was 8. She didn't know why she was listing them. It was coming out of her like something that had been dammed up for a very long time. And my father's new mate, and a beta called Doran, and the... Stop. She stopped. His hand came up, slow. He did not touch her face. She thought for a second that he was going to, and some part of her leaned very slightly into the idea of it, which shocked her so much she almost stepped back. But he didn't touch her. He just held his hand a few inches from her cheek, and she felt the heat come off his palm, and one by one the small cuts on her face, the split lip, the cut on her cheek, the rope burns on her throat, stopped hurting. They didn't close. They didn't heal. They just stopped hurting. You cannot stay here, he said. I have nowhere to go. Yes, he said. You do. She looked up at him. Come with me, he said. It was not a question. It wasn't quite an order either. It was something in between. The way a storm tells you it's coming. You could agree with it or disagree with it. The storm didn't care. Why? She said. Because whatever's inside you, Elara Thorn, is older than any Alpha King in the Northern Reach, and older than Blackthorn, and older than the stone you are standing on. And because your pack did not lose you tonight, your pack gave you away. And the old laws are very clear about what happens when a pack gives its blood away on a settling stone under a red moon. She hadn't known the moon was red. She looked up. It was. A thin disk of old, tarnished copper low on the horizon, climbing up out of the fog. It made the plain look like it had been washed in blood. What happens? She said, quietly. The wolf who gives is no longer kin, he said, and the wolf who is given belongs to whoever finds her. Her breath stopped. That's just a story. The old laws aren't binding anymore. They're binding to me. He said it so plainly, so without any kind of heat, that she believed him instantly. And then, because she was 19 and terrified and something inside her had woken up for the first time and she had no idea what she was doing, she asked the question she shouldn't have asked. So I belong to you now. His mouth, for the first time, moved. Not a smile. Not quite. The corner of it. That depends, he said, on whether you want to. She stared at him. You don't have to answer now. He stepped back off the stone. The air between them went very slightly, less heavy. Come. I will not force you, but I will also not leave you here for men who are not fit to touch you. She looked around, at the stone, at the fog, at the bloody moon, at the cold plain where she was supposed to have died and by every law she had ever been taught, had died. The Elara Thorn who had been laid down on that stone was gone, and something else was standing up in her skin, something with black writing on its arm, and warm blood in its veins, and an alpha king waiting at the edge of its circle. She stepped off the stone. Her bare feet hit the cold ground. She winced. Before she had taken a second step, he had crossed the space between them in one long stride, bent down, and lifted her off the ground as if she weighed nothing. She made a small, startled sound. "Put me! I can walk. Your feet are cut open. I've been walking on them all day. I can—" "Elara." She shut up. He carried her like it cost him nothing. His arm was under her knees and the other was at her back, and her cheek was almost against the silver clasp at his throat, and the smell of him was making the thing inside her chest turn over like a big, warm animal stretching in its sleep. "Where are we going?" she said. Quiet. "North," he said. "To my house. Your house. My hold. My fortress. My— You will see. Will they—" Her throat was tight. "Will they come for me? My pack?" "They may try." "And if they try—" He looked down at her. The red moon was in his eyes now, and they weren't iron anymore. So they were sure. They were something hotter, darker, something she didn't have a name for. "Then they will learn," he said softly, "what it costs to touch what is mine." She should have flinched. She didn't. Somewhere far behind them, on the blackthorn side of the plain, a wolf howled, the long, thin, morning howl of a scout who had come back to the stone at dawn and found nothing on it but a warm spot on the lichen, and a single thin line of black writing burned into the rock. By then, Elara Thorne was already a long way gone, and the first mark of what she was going to become was already spreading, slow as ink in water, up the inside of her arm toward her heart. She slept against his chest for the first 3 hours of the ride, and she didn't know she was sleeping until she woke up. That was the part that scared her the most, later. Not that a stranger had picked her off a stone and carried her north. Not that the man carrying her was the kind of alpha whose name got whispered in the corners of rooms. The part that scared her was that her body had decided somewhere between the settling stone and the tree line that it was safe enough to close its eyes. Her body had never decided that before. Not once. Not in 19 years. She came back to herself slowly, the way you come up through deep water. There was a horse under them, a big, dark horse with a wet mane and a steady gait. And Ronan Vale had a gray wool cloak wrapped around her that smelled like cedar and cold iron, and one of his arms was across her waist holding her upright against him, and the other held the reins loose in his gloved fingers. They were in trees, old trees, the kind that grew so close together the sky disappeared. "You're awake," he said. Quiet. He didn't look down at her. "How long?" 3 hours. Maybe a little more. "I didn't mean to—" "Stop." She shut her mouth. "You have not slept in a long time," he said. "I could feel it in your bones when I picked you up. Your body knew what to do." She flexed her fingers inside the cloak. The black markings were still there on her wrist, but they had gone quiet. Thin, dark, no longer moving, like something that had finished a sentence and was waiting to see if she'd answer. "Where are we?" she said. "Violand. 2 hours in, 5 hours to the hold. We'll stop at a way station before dawn and ride the rest in daylight. Is it safe?" "Safer than the stone." "That is not—" She almost laughed, which shocked her because she hadn't laughed in a very long time. "That is not a high bar, Alpha." Something moved in his chest where her shoulder was pressed against it. It took her a second to realize it was a short, low sound. Not quite a laugh. Closer to a grunt of acknowledgement, but it was warm, and it meant he'd heard her, and some part of her, some stupid starving part, noted it and put it away for later like a stolen piece of bread. "Ronan." "What?" "Your name is Ronan. You told me. I should call you that. Instead of Alpha. Call me whatever you want. In my pack, Omegas didn't—" "You are not in your pack." That one hit somewhere under her ribs. She didn't answer. They rode in silence for a while after that. The trees thinned, then thickened again. Somewhere high above the canopy, birds were starting up. Not morning birds, night birds, nervous ones, the kind that went quiet when anything large moved through. Ronan's horse didn't flinch. His horse, she was coming to understand, didn't flinch at anything. Ronan. Why were you there?" He was quiet for long enough that she thought he wasn't going to answer. I was hunting, he said finally. Hunting what? Something old. A rumor. I've been following it for almost a year. What kind of rumor? He didn't answer that one at all. She let it go. She was not in a position to press an alpha king for answers in the middle of his own forest at 3 a.m. She was not, she reminded herself, in any kind of position at all. She was a rope-burned, barefoot, cut-up Omega who had been declared dead by her own father 12 hours ago, and the only thing between her and another cold stone somewhere was the arm of a man whose name made hardened blackthorn betas cross themselves when they'd thought she wasn't listening. Ronan. Yes. If I asked you to take me somewhere else, not your hold, somewhere I could just disappear, would you? His arm tightened very briefly across her waist, not painfully, just enough that she felt it. No, he said. Why? Because you would not last a week. You don't know that. Elara. He said her name the way he had on the stone, like it was a complete sentence on its own. You do not know how to hunt. You do not know how to fight. You do not know what you are carrying inside you or what will come looking for it once word spreads. And word will spread. By sundown today, every alpha between here and the Salt Coast will know that something left a blackthorn settling stone alive. They will all want to see it. Some of them will want to kill it. Some of them will want to own it. None of them will let you disappear. And you? What about me? What do you want? The horse took 5-6 steps in silence. I don't know yet, he said. It was, she realized with a small jolt, the first time anyone had said a true thing to her in as long as she could remember. Yeah. They stopped at the way station a little before dawn. It wasn't much. A low stone cottage with a slate roof and a chimney leaking thin blue smoke dug into the side of a ridge like someone had tucked it there and forgotten about it. 2 men came out as Ronan rode up, and both of them dropped to one knee in the mud before his horse had even fully stopped. Alpha. Get up, Halden. Get the fire higher. The girl's cold. Mara, water for the horse and a basin hot enough to clean a cut. Move. They moved. Ronan lifted her down off the horse like she was made of paper. Her legs didn't hold her. He steadied her with one hand against her back and walked her inside. And the cottage was small and warm and smelled like wood smoke and lamb fat and something herbal she didn't recognize. And for a moment she stood in the middle of it and just tried to remember how to breathe in a room that had heat in it. The woman, Mara, was maybe 50, gray-streaked braid down her back, hands like old leather. She looked at Elara once, hard, from the feet up to the face, and Elara saw her eyes catch on the marks climbing the inside of her arm. Mara went very still. Alpha, she said, slow. Her arm. I know. Do you know what those are? Not precisely, do you? Mara was still staring. My grandmother would have. My grandmother used to say her grandmother could read them. I cannot. But I know enough to know. She stopped, cleared her throat, looked away. To know they should not be on a living girl, Alpha. Yet they are. Yes, Alpha. Then you will be polite to her, Mara, and you will tell no one what you saw on her skin. Do we understand each other? Yes, Alpha. Elara stood in the middle of the warm room feeling like she was naked. The cloak was still around her, but she might as well have been under glass. Mara's eyes on her were not cruel, exactly, but they were frightened, and Elara had spent a lot of her life being looked at like something inconvenient. She had not ever been looked at like something dangerous. It made her stomach turn over in a way she didn't expect. It didn't feel entirely bad. Sit, Mira said, gentler now. She pulled a low wooden stool to the fire. Alpha, she is bleeding. I know that too. Her feet. Yes. Elara sat. Mira knelt, set down a wooden basin of steaming water, took one of Elara's feet in her leathery hands, and hissed through her teeth. Child, what did they make you walk on? Gravel, Elara said quietly. Some. Pine needles, mostly, and then the field. Barefoot. Omegas and Blackthorn they don't get boots. Mira's jaw worked. I've heard stories of Blackthorn. I thought they were exaggerations. They weren't. Mira lowered Elara's foot into the water. It burned. It burned so badly Elara made a sound in her throat she hadn't meant to make, and Ronan, who had been standing by the window watching the yard, turned his head sharply. "It's fine," she said fast. "It's fine, it's just warm. It is not fine," he said. "I've had worse." "I know you have. That is not a reason." She couldn't answer that. She sat with both her feet in hot water for the first time in 19 years, watching dirty, bloody water darken the basin, and she made herself not cry. She had cried on the stone. She had used her crying up for the whole week. She wasn't going to do it again in front of this woman she didn't know, in a cottage that was not hers. Mira worked in silence. She pulled a thorn Elara hadn't known was there out of the ball of her right foot with a pair of iron tweezers, cleaned both feet with something that smelled like strong pine spirit, and wrapped them in clean linen. Then she stood up with her knees popping and went to the kettle. "Drink this," she said, pressing a wooden cup into Elara's hands. "All of it, no sipping." "What is it?" "Bone broth, lamb fat, salt, and a little of something that will let you keep sleeping without dreaming. You need another 4 hours at least before we put you back on a horse." Elara looked at the cup, then at Ronan. He nodded, once. She drank it. It tasted like salt and animal, and something faintly bitter underneath. Halfway down, she started to feel the room tilt a little, gently, the way a boat tilts when the water moves. "Where?" She swallowed. "Where am I going to—" "Here," Mira said. "There's a cot in the back. Alpha will be in the front room. You are safer in this cottage tonight than you have ever been in your life, girl. Finish the cup." She finished the cup. Ronan had come away from the window at some point. He stood in front of her, tall enough that even sitting on the stool she had to look almost straight up at him, and the firelight was in his face now and she could see him properly for the first time. The small scar that split his left eyebrow, the dark gold under the iron of his eyes, a shadow of stubble on his jaw that he hadn't had when he'd come to the stone. He looked tired. She hadn't thought a man like him could look tired. "See," he said. "When you wake, we ride." "Ronan." "Yes." "Thank you." His mouth did the thing again, not a smile, the corner of one. He didn't say "you're welcome." She didn't expect him to. He just looked at her for a moment longer, something unreadable moving in his face, and then he turned and walked back to the window. Mira helped her up. The room tilted harder. The last thing Elara remembered was a thin straw mattress and a rough wool blanket that smelled like lanolin, and the distant sound of Ronan's voice, low, saying something to Halden in the front room that had the word rider in it, and the word south, and the word already. Then the dark. She woke in full daylight to shouting. Not in the cottage, outside. Men's voices, 3 or 4 of them, angry, and one of them pitched high with fear. Her body was awake before her mind was. She was up off the cot and on her feet with the blanket dragged around her shoulders before she had really decided to move. Her feet still hurt. She didn't care. She went to the front room. Ronan was gone. So were his cloak and his sword belt. Halden was standing at the cottage door with a short axe in his hand, and Mara was at his shoulder with a skinning knife, and the door was cracked just enough that Elara could see past them into the yard. 3 men in blackthorn leather. Her breath left her in one hard push. She knew them. She knew all 3 of them. Doran, the older beta who had held her rope yesterday. A tracker named Wit whose job it was to find runaways. And at the back, Torin, the boy who had cried when they'd marched her out. Torin was the one whose voice she'd heard pitched high. Ronan was standing in front of them. He had not drawn his sword. He didn't need to. He was standing in the middle of the yard in his black coat with his arms at his sides and the sun just coming up gray behind him, and Doran, who was easily 230 pounds of angry beta, was backed up almost to the edge of the tree line, not moving toward Ronan, not moving away either. Frozen, the way a deer freezes when it realizes the thing it was walking toward is not another deer. "Say it again," Ronan said. Flat, calm. "The first part. I want to make sure I heard you." "I said," Doran's voice was almost steady, "by the right of pack, we've come to claim a runaway. She belongs to Blackthorn. Alpha Garrick sent us to—" "No. Alpha, she does not belong to Blackthorn. Blackthorn gave her away. On a settling stone, under a red moon, with the old words. Those are not my rules, Beta. Those are the rules your own Alpha invoked when he laid her down. So I am going to ask you a question, and I am going to ask it only once. A pause. Do you want to tell me, out loud, in front of your own men, that your Alpha does not know his own law? Doran didn't answer. I thought not, Ronan said. Wit, the tracker, shifted his weight. He was younger than Doran, and he had one hand on the knife at his belt. Elara saw his fingers flex. Ronan saw it too. Don't, Ronan said quietly. Your hand. Move it. Wit didn't move his hand. Ronan's head tilted a quarter inch. Wit, Doran said. Tight. Wit, move your hand. Wit moved his hand. Better, Ronan said. He let the silence sit for a beat. Now, you can leave on your feet, or you can leave on the back of that horse with whatever's left of you strapped across it. Those are the two options on offer today. I would strongly suggest the first. Alpha, Doran's voice had gone raw. With respect, Alpha, we've ridden all night. Garrick will... If we go back without her, he'll... That is not my concern. He will have our throats, Alpha. Then take it up with them. Ronan's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. I am not in the business of solving Blackthorn's problems. I suggest you learn faster Alphas, or quieter ones. Now go. Alpha, please. Go. It wasn't a shout. It was lower than a shout. It was the kind of word that came out of the ground itself, and Elara felt it through the wood of the door frame her fingers were pressed against, and she saw the three Blackthorn men feel it through their boots. Wit made a small sound in his throat. Doran actually staggered half a step back. Torin, at the rear, went bone white. And then Torin did something very stupid. Torin looked past Ronan. He saw her. He saw Elara in the doorway, half behind Halden, blanket around her shoulders, and his eyes went very wide. And Elara saw him open his mouth, to plead maybe, or to apologize, or to beg her to come back so his throat wouldn't get cut. And Ronan saw where Torin was looking, and Ronan turned his head. Go back inside, Elara. Ronan. Inside! She stepped back from the door. She did not go inside. She stepped back one pace, just far enough that Torin couldn't see her anymore, and she stood in the narrow hallway of Mara's cottage with her hands against the wall, and she listened. You, Ronan said. The young one. Me, Alpha. Name. Torin, Alpha. Torin Vale, Alpha. Third-year beta of the Torin Vale. Did you walk her out of that shed yesterday morning? A long, long silence. Yes, Alpha. Did you know what she was being walked out to? Yes, Alpha. Did you help? Another silence. Longer. I didn't stop it, Alpha. Answer the question I asked. Did you help? Yes, Alpha. Ronan was quiet for a beat. Then take a message back to Alpha Garrick Blackthorn for me. Tell him what I am about to tell you exactly. Word for word. Do you understand? Yes, Alpha. Tell him. The thing you laid down is mine now. The debt you created when you laid it down is mine now. If you or any wolf under your banner crosses the Vale line looking for her, or looking for me, or looking for anything that used to belong to her, you will not die in a battle. You will die in your bed. And I will ride the corpses of your betas home across my saddle, one at a time, until your pack is a name on a stone and nothing else. A pause. Repeat it. Torin repeated it. His voice broke twice. Good, Ronan said. Now ride. If I see you on Vale soil again, Torin Vale, I will not remember that you were kind enough to ask her if it would hurt. Do we understand each other? Elara's knees almost gave. Torin hadn't told anyone that. Torin couldn't have told anyone that. She hadn't told anyone that. It had been 6 words between 2 people in a gray pre-dawn yard, and somehow Ronan Vale had it, and he was using it. She realized, standing in Mara's hallway with her palms cold against the wood, that Ronan had been listening to a great deal more of her life than she had understood. She didn't know whether that comforted her or frightened her, maybe both. Outside, hooves, leaving fast. 3 horses, heading south into the trees at a gallop that said they were not going to stop galloping for a long time. The cottage door opened. Ronan came in. Halden lowered his axe. Mara exhaled a long breath she'd been holding. Ronan didn't look at either of them. He looked at Elara, standing in the hallway in the blanket, and for a second his face did something she hadn't seen on it yet. Something tight and hot, and almost ashamed, though she couldn't think of a single thing in that yard he had anything to be ashamed of. "You were listening," he said. "Yes." "I told you to go inside." "I didn't." He looked at her. "No," he said. "You didn't. Are you angry?" He thought about it. It struck her that he actually thought about it, which was not how anyone had ever answered a question of hers before. "No," he said. "I am not angry. I would have preferred you hadn't heard what I said to the boy." "Why?" "Because I meant it." That sat in the room for a long moment. Mara, very quietly, picked up a pot and carried it into the back as if she had just remembered something urgent she needed to do elsewhere. Halden found a piece of kindling to examine in the corner. Elara didn't move. "Ronan." "Yes." "If they come back in numbers, will you?" "Yes." "Even though I—" "Yes." She realized her breathing had gone thin. She leaned her shoulder against the wall. "Why?" she said, quiet. You don't know me. You picked me up off a rock. You don't owe me." "Elara." "You don't owe me anything. You could just—" "Elara." He crossed the room. He didn't touch her. He stopped about a foot short of touching her, and he bent his head a little so he could look her in the eye, and his iron eyes had gone gold at the edges in the firelight. "I did not pick you up off a rock because I owed you something. I picked you up off a rock because you were on a rock. And no one gets to put you on a rock. Not them. Not me. No one. Do you understand me?" "No," she said. Honest. He exhaled, slow, almost a laugh. "Not quite." "You will," he said. "Eat. We ride in an hour." The Vale hold came into view late that afternoon. It wasn't what she'd expected. She'd expected something like Blackthorn, a cluster of longhouses, a central lodge, a stockade. What she saw when the trees opened up and the ridge fell away beneath them was a fortress, cut gray stone rising out of a cliff face above a long, dark, cold lake. 3 towers, a curtain wall with watchmen every 50 paces, a gate that looked like it had been built by people who knew someone, someday, was going to try to break it. It was the kind of place you didn't sneak into, the kind of place things went into and did not come out of. Elara felt the markings on her arm go warm again. Not a warning, an acknowledgement, like they knew where she was. "This is Stormhold," Ronan said behind her. His chest was a warm wall against her back. "It's been in my family for 9 generations. The gate has never been forced." "How many wolves inside?" 400, give or take, 300 fighters. The rest are family, healers, a few artisans, a lot of children. He paused. "None of them have ever seen an Omega like you." "I'm not—" "You are." "I don't even know what I am, Ronan. I don't know what's on my arm. I don't know why I lived through last night. I know." "Then how can you—" "Because I don't need you to know what you are yet, Elara. I only need you to know what you are not." She turned her head a little against his shoulder. "What am I not?" "You are not a girl who gets given away," he said. "Not anymore." They rode through the gate. It was the first time in her life she had crossed a threshold under a roof that was not going to punish her for being under it, and her body did something weird. Her whole chest just sank inward, like some muscle she had been holding tight for 19 years finally let go, and she had to grab the pommel of Ronan's saddle to keep from folding in half. He felt it. His arm, already around her, tightened. "Steady," he said, almost under his breath. "Steady, little wolf? Not yet." The courtyard was paved with big flat stones, wet and dark from recent rain. There were people everywhere, all stopping whatever they'd been doing to turn and look. A boy was carrying a bucket and just stood there holding it, water slopping onto his boots, mouth open. An older woman, with her arms full of folded cloth, actually dropped the cloth. A gray-haired beta with a scar across half his face, who had clearly been in charge of something before they'd arrived, started walking toward them and then stopped, because he was staring at the girl on the Alpha King's saddle and the thin black writing climbing up her bare wrist. Ronan dismounted first. He lifted her down. Her wrapped feet touched the stone and she wobbled. His hand stayed at her elbow. The gray-haired beta with the scar reached them. He didn't bow. Elara noticed that. He stood, almost casually, hands behind his back, and she understood, without being told, that this was a wolf who did not have to bow to Ronan Vale because he had earned the right not to a long time ago. Alpha. Kale. You're 3 days early and you've brought company. I have. Kale's eyes went to Elara. They were pale green and very tired and very shrewd, and they did what Mara's had done. Caught on her wrist and stayed there for a beat too long. Alpha, Kale said quietly. Are those what I think they are? Not here. Understood. Kale's gaze came back to Ronan's face. The council will want to meet her. No. Alpha. No, Kale, not yet. She's been on her feet for 2 days. She hasn't eaten properly, and half the pack is going to be told she exists in the next 20 minutes, whether I like it or not. She is not standing in front of 12 old alphas tonight. Some of them will not take that well. Some of them rarely do. Put her in the East Tower. The room's above mine. Tell Yarrow to see to her feet again. Tell the kitchen to send up something she can actually keep down. Bone broth, soft bread, no red meat. She's too thin for it. And Kyle, Alpha. No one. In those rooms, not a maid, not a healer, not a cousin, not anyone on this rock without my word. Is that clear? Perfectly clear, Alpha. Kyle inclined his head, not a bow, an acknowledgement, and walked off across the courtyard, snapping orders at people who scattered in front of him like birds. Ronan turned to her. She was still holding his arm. She had not realized she was still holding his arm. She let go fast, and his mouth twitched. Come, he said, before you fall down in front of my cousin, and I have to explain to him why I brought you across 400 miles, only to let you crack your head on the stones. The rooms in the East Tower were not what she had prepared herself for. She had prepared herself for a cell, a servant's room, a locked door, at best a bed and a chamber pot. That was what being taken somewhere by a powerful alpha meant. Every story anyone had ever whispered in the kitchens of Blackthorn had made that clear. What she was given instead were 3 connected rooms above the great hall, a sitting room with 2 deep chairs by a fireplace already lit, a bathing room with an iron tub and a kettle on a hook, and thick stacks of folded linen, a bedroom with a real bed, not a cot, a bed, with 4 posts and a heavy wool coverlet and a pillow, and a narrow window that looked out over the dark lake. She stood in the middle of the sitting room, blankets still around her shoulders, and she couldn't make her legs work to walk any further into it. An older woman came in. Yarrow, presumably. Short, round, with iron gray hair pinned back and warm, steady hands, and eyes that had seen a lot and didn't feel the need to comment on most of it. Yarrow took one look at her and said mildly, All right, love, let's get you warm first. The rest can wait. Elara burst into tears. She hadn't meant to. She had meant to be composed. She had meant to be the cold, sharp girl who had told Mira no on the settling stone. But Yarrow had said love in a voice that had no cruelty in it, and Elara's knees folded, and she sat down on the rug in front of the fire and cried into her hands in a way she hadn't let herself cry in 19 years. Yarrow did not say a word. She knelt down on the rug with her old knees and put one warm, dry hand on the back of Elara's neck, and she just kept it there, solid and unhurried, while Elara shook apart on the floor. After a while, Elara became aware that someone else was in the doorway. Ronan. She knew it was him without turning her head. Her body was starting to know when it was him before her eyes caught up. He didn't come in. He just stood in the doorway and watched, and after a long moment he said very quietly, Yarrow. Alpha. Is she all right? She is a girl who has not been allowed to cry in a long time, Alpha. Let her. How long will this? As long as it takes, Alpha. Go. She doesn't want you to see this. Elara, still hiccuping into her hands, thought very distantly, Yes, I do. And then, immediately after, No, I don't. She's right. She heard his footsteps go. She heard the outer door shut. She cried for another 10 minutes. Yarrow's hand didn't move. When she finally lifted her head, her face puffy and her nose running, Yarrow handed her a clean cloth. Better, Yarrow said. Not a question, a statement. I don't know why I do. Up you get. The water's warm now. Mantel. She bathed. She ate. Broth, like Ronan had said, and soft black bread with butter. And she ate so slowly the first few bites hurt going down because her stomach had forgotten what bread was. Yarrow unwrapped her feet, cleaned them again, put a thick dark salve on them that smelled like tree bark, and burned for about 10 seconds and then stopped hurting entirely and rewrapped them in clean linen. "What is that?" Elara said, nodding at the salve pot. "Old family recipe?" "Don't ask what's in it, love. You won't like half of it." "Is it magic?" Yarrow snorted. "Plants, patience. The right plants at the right time, crushed the right way. There's more magic in that than in any of the showier stuff, believe me." Then Yarrow looked at Elara's arm. She didn't touch it. She just looked at it for a long moment, the way Mara had. But Yarrow's face did not go frightened. It went careful. The way a face goes when someone is doing sums in their head that they do not like the shape of. "Child," Yarrow said slowly, "who is your mother?" She died. I was born and her name, love. Celine Thorne. Thorne was her husband's name. Yes, yes, her given name before, I don't know, nobody ever told me. They didn't. Yarrow was quiet. "What?" Elara whispered. "What is it?" "Nothing I can be sure of yet." Yarrow's old eyes were very steady on hers. "But I will tell you something, Elara Thorne, and I will say it once, because the Alpha will not have told you, because he is the sort of man who waits to be sure before he opens his mouth, and that is not always a kindness. The marks on your arm, I have seen them before." "Where?" "In a book. One book. In a library 300 miles from here that no longer exists because someone burned it down 40 years ago. I was young. I was an apprentice. I was not supposed to be in that part of the library, and I saw perhaps 3 pages, and I did not understand them." Yarrow paused. "What I can tell you is this. Those marks do not belong to Omegas. They do not belong to Alphas. They do not belong, as far as any wolf I have ever met understands it, to wolves at all. They belong to something much older than wolves. And whatever that something is, child, someone, a very long time ago, hid it in your blood. Hid it very well. Hid it well enough that it took a red moon on a settling stone to pull it up. Do you understand what I am saying to you?" "San nis." Elara couldn't answer. Yarrow gathered her things. She stood up. At the door she paused, her hand on the frame. "The Alpha is a good man," she said, "as far as Alpha Kings go. He is mine, and I raised him from a boy when his mother died, and I will tell you he is the best of them. But even he cannot protect you from this forever, love. What's in you is going to want to come out. The only question is whether you come out with it or whether it comes out without you." She left. Elara sat on the edge of the enormous bed in the too large room, with her bandaged feet on a rug she didn't deserve to stand on, and she stared at the black writing on her arm. And the black writing slowly began to move again. Not the quiet shimmer of before, but a long, unspooling line of new markings, crawling up the inside of her elbow toward her bicep, toward her shoulder, toward her heart. They were spreading. She watched them for a long time, and for the first time, they did not feel like something that was happening to her. They felt like something she was doing. The door opened without a knock. She didn't jump. She knew whose footstep it was. Ronan stood in the doorway. He had changed out of his travel coat. He wore a plain black shirt and dark trousers, and his sleeves were pushed up to the elbow, and Elara saw, for the first time, that his forearms were covered in old silver scars. Not clean ones, the kind that come from blades, but the knotted kind, the kind that come from teeth. He stopped when he saw her arm. "They're spreading," he said. "Yes." "Yarrow told you something." "Yes." "Did she tell you all of it?" "She told me enough." He came in. He closed the door behind him. He crossed the room and stopped at the foot of the bed, and he did not sit down, and he did not touch her. "Elara." "Yes." "Tomorrow morning, 12 Alphas from the High Council will ride into Stormhold and demand to see you." Her breath caught. "You told Kale." "I told Kale not tonight. Kale listened. Which means tonight, Right now, Kale is writing a letter to every council seat in the Northern Reach telling them to come. That is his job. He is the best pack second I have ever had, and his job is to know when to disobey me, and he knew to disobey me on this. What do they want? To decide what you are, who you belong to, whether the thing in your blood is an asset or a threat, whether you live in this hold as a free wolf or as something they put in a collar and keep in a room somewhere for my enemies to bargain for. Her hands went cold. Can they do that? Can they put me in a... They can try. And you. I will not allow it. And if you can't stop them... His eyes, the iron in them, had gone almost completely gold now, in the low firelight, held hers. Then there will not be a council anymore, he said softly, and there will not be a Northern Reach. There will be whatever I decide to build in its place. And they know this, which is why they will try very politely tomorrow, Elara, and why they will expect you to be very polite back. I don't know how to... I know you don't. I was scrubbing pots 2 nights ago. I know. I don't even know how to stand in a room with 1 alpha, let alone 12. I can't... Elara. He did sit down then. Not next to her, on the other end of the bed, far enough not to crowd her, close enough that when he leaned forward with his forearms on his knees, she could smell the cedar and iron on his skin again. Listen to me. You do not have to know how. You only have to do 2 things tomorrow. Can you do 2 things? I can try. 1. You will not speak to them unless I speak first, not because you are lesser, because the first wolf to speak in that room loses ground, and I want them to lose it, not you. 2. You will not, he said slow, apologize to them for existing, not with your words, not with your face, not with the way you hold your shoulders. You will stand in that room as if the ground we stand on is yours, because by the old laws, it is now as much yours as mine. Do you understand me? I don't know if I can. Then pretend. Pretend. Pretend until the pretending becomes the thing. That is how every wolf who has ever stood in that hall learned to stand in it, including me, including my father, including his. Pretend. She looked down at her arm. The black lines had reached her shoulder. Ronan. Yes. What if tomorrow, when they look at me, they see what I used to be? What if they smell the kitchen and the pot rag and the stone? What if they take one look at me and they just know I was... They will not. You don't... Elara. His voice had gone quiet in a way that made the hair on her arms stand up. Look at me. She looked at him. I have been in a hall with all 12 of those wolves at once more times than I can count. Half of them are older than Yarrow. Half of them have killed more wolves than you have ever met. Not one of them has ever looked at me the way I look at you when you are across a room. Not one. You will walk into that hall tomorrow with the mark of something older than any pack on your skin, and you will look those 12 wolves in the eye, and I promise you, Elara Thorne, not a single one of them will see a girl who used to scrub pots. Do you know why? Why? Because I will be standing next to you. And they have all seen me in a bad mood before. She laughed. She actually laughed. A short, wet, shocked sound. He smiled, properly, this time, just for a second, the corner of his mouth going up, and it did something to his face that she was not prepared for, and she had to look down at her hands. He stood. Sleep, he said. Yarrow will bring you clothes before sunrise. I will come for you at the 8th bell. Ronan. Yes. If I make a mistake tomorrow, if I say the wrong thing, or I freeze, then I will handle it. That is my job. You have one job, which is stay alive. He walked to the door. Ronan. He stopped without turning. Why me? She said. Very small. You could have anyone. Any alpha daughter, any council heir, anyone. Why have you spent 3 days on me? He was quiet for a long moment. Because, he said, still not turning, whatever woke up on that stone under the red moon recognized me before I recognized it. And I have been looking for it my whole life, Elara Thorne. And I did not know what it was going to look like when I found it. A beat. I do now. He opened the door. Sleep. He left. She sat on the enormous bed in the too-large room in the fortress above the cold lake, and she watched the black writing on her arm finish climbing to her collarbone and stop, humming at the base of her throat, right at the scar she had worn her whole life. Somewhere far below, in the courtyard, a bell rang once. Down the long stone corridor outside her door, she heard a man's footsteps stop, then start again, then stop. Someone was standing outside her room. Not Ronan. The step was wrong. She sat very still on the edge of the bed, and the warm thing under her ribs, the old thing, the thing that had woken on the stone, slowly, quietly, without her telling it to, began to open its eyes. The footsteps stopped again, closer this time, and then went silent in that particular way that meant whoever was out there had decided to hold still and wait. Elara stood up off the bed. She didn't know she had decided to stand up until she was standing. Her bandaged feet hit the cold stone floor through the thin soles of the bedroom slippers Yarrow had left, and the warm thing under her ribs, the old thing, was no longer just awake. It was listening, along with her, through her, like another set of ears stitched into the back of her own skull. The markings on her arm had gone hot, not warm, hot, not burning hot, but the kind of hot that a stone is after a whole day of summer sun. And it was climbing, she could feel it climbing, up her throat to her jaw. Whoever was outside her door was an alpha. She didn't know how she knew that. She hadn't been told, but her body knew it the way her body had known what Ronan was on the stone. And this one was not Ronan, and this one was not small. She crossed the sitting room without making a sound. The rug swallowed her steps. She stopped about 2 feet from the heavy oak door, and she put her palm flat against it. The wood was warm. On the other side, a breath. Slow. Controlled. The breath of a wolf who had been standing there on purpose for longer than a wolf should stand anywhere on purpose. "I can hear you," she said. She didn't know where the voice came from. It was not her normal voice. It was lower and steadier than her normal voice. And it was a voice the girl who had scrubbed pots in Blackthorn 2 nights ago would never have produced. And hearing it come out of her own mouth made her skin go cold under the hot markings. On the other side of the door, silence for 1 beat. 2. Then a low, amused male voice. "I know." "Who are you?" "A guest, the same as you." "That is not a name." "No, little wolf, it isn't." The knob turned. She didn't step back. She was very proud of herself for that later. She was already learning, without knowing she was learning it, that stepping back in this place meant losing something you would not get back. She stood her ground with her palm still on the wood, and the door opened about 6 inches and stopped because her palm was still there, and the wolf on the other side did not push it any further. She saw him through the crack, tall. Not as tall as Ronan, but broader. Gray at the temples, a thin, sharp face with a trimmed gray beard and pale blue eyes, the kind of blue that has never been warm a day in its life. He was wearing a deep red coat with bone buttons, and at his throat was a pin in the shape of a wolf's jawbone done in old silver, the sigil of one of the High Council seats. She didn't know which. She didn't need to. Just the fact of it was enough to make the breath in her chest want to leave her. "You are not supposed to be here," she said. "No," he agreed. "I'm not." The Alpha said a great many things in the courtyard today, child. I was there. I heard him. The hold was already full of council riders by the time you passed through the gate. Did no one tell you that?" Her stomach turned. Kale. Kale had not been writing letters in the next room, then. Kale had been opening a door that had already had men on the other side of it. "Who are you?" she said again. Flatter this time. "Lord Garrett Holloway," he said, "of Holloway House, senior seat of the Council of 12. I am the old wolf in the room, if you will, and old wolves do not sleep as well as young ones. I thought I would see what it is that has brought an Alpha King home 3 days early with a bleeding girl on his saddle." "And did you see?" "I am seeing." "Then you can go." The pale blue eyes did not move. "May I come in, Elara Thorne?" "No." "You are certain?" "Yes." "A pity." He took half a step back. She thought for an instant that he was going to leave, and the breath she had been holding started to come out. And his hand, impossibly fast, came up through the crack in the door and caught her wrist. The one with the markings. He caught her by the forearm, just below the elbow, and his grip was not cruel, but it was iron, and the markings under his fingers went, for one dizzy second, blinding. She saw him blink. The markings actually lit the skin from inside, a thin, hot line of something that looked almost like molten copper running through the black. And Garrett Holloway of Holloway House, senior seat of the Council of 12, inhaled through his nose very slowly and did not let go of her. "Well," he said softly. "Hello." "Let go." "In a moment." "Let go. Child. I am not going to hurt you. I am an old man, and I have had these fingers broken more times than you have teeth, and I am holding your arm because I want to look at something that I have not seen on a living wolf in 63 years. Stay still." She did not stay still. She pulled, not with her arm, with the thing under her ribs, the old thing, the thing that had been listening. She did not know she could pull with it. She did not know you could pull with anything that wasn't a muscle. But she did it anyway, and the hot line of copper in her skin jumped under his hand like a live wire. And Garrett Holloway made a small, surprised noise in his throat and let go. He took one step back. He looked at his own palm. There was a thin red welt across it, in the exact shape of the markings under her skin. "Ah," he said. His voice had changed. There was something in it now, not fear, not quite. Something older. Respect, maybe, or its opposite. "What did you do to me, little wolf?" "I don't know." "No, I don't imagine you do." He flexed his hand, winced. "Do it again." "No." "Please." "No." A slow smile. It did not touch the pale blue eyes. "You don't know what you are, do you?" he said. "Ronan hasn't told you, or he doesn't know either, which is interesting, very interesting. Get away from my door." "I'm going, child, I'm going. But before I do," he adjusted the cuff of his red coat calmly, as if he had not just been burned by her, a piece of advice. Old wolf to new one. "The Council of 12 meets in 7 hours. You will be brought into the hall. There are rules to that hall. Ronan will tell you some of them. He will not tell you all of them. So I will tell you one he will not." "I didn't ask." "I know you didn't. Listen anyway. When you are asked who your mother was, Elara Thorne, do not say Celine Thorne." Her blood stopped moving. "Don't say it, but don't say it as if it means nothing. That is my advice. Say it as if you know what it means, even if you do not, especially if you do not. Do you understand me?" "No." "You will." He inclined his head. Not a bow. An acknowledgement, the same gesture Cale had given Ronan in the courtyard. And it occurred to her, with a cold, slow sinking, that she had been given that gesture twice today by wolves who did not give it easily. Garrett Holloway turned. He walked down the corridor. His boots made almost no sound on the stone. A door opened somewhere at the far end and closed. And then there was silence. Elara stood in her doorway with her palms still pressed flat against wood that was no longer warm, and she breathed in small, shallow breaths until she was sure her knees were not going to buckle. Her mother. Celine. She didn't even know her mother's face. She didn't know her mother's voice. She didn't know what color her mother's hair had been. The midwives had never told her, and her father, on the 2 occasions she had dared to ask, had hit her hard enough across the mouth that she had not asked again. She had grown up understanding, without being told, that there was something shameful about her mother, something the pack did not discuss, something that was part of why an Omega daughter of Kellen Thorne was less than dirt, even by Omega standards, because whatever her mother had been, her father had chosen to erase it when he had walked out of the longhouse the morning she was born. Don't say it as if it means nothing. She shut the door. She leaned her forehead against it. She thought, very quietly, very clearly, I am in much more trouble than I thought I was. She did not sleep. Yarrow came before sunrise, as promised, with 2 other women behind her carrying a stack of folded dark cloth and a wooden box and a small kettle. They did not speak much. They moved around her the way people move around a patient who is not yet sure they are a patient, and they dressed her without making her feel like a thing being dressed. The clothes were gray and black, plain for the fortress. A long dark tunic that came to mid-thigh over narrower trousers, both of a soft wool that was thicker than anything she had ever owned. Over that, a long, sleeveless coat in deep charcoal with a high collar and silver clasps at the throat. Boots, real boots, cut to her foot, lined with something warm. "No red," Yarrow said, half to one of the other women. "No gold, no white. I don't want her looking like a prize on a table. Will they think she's in mourning? Let them." The one touch that wasn't gray was a thin silver chain Yarrow produced from the wooden box and laid across the hollow of Elara's throat. A single small pendant hung from it, a dark stone, polished flat, cold against her skin. "What is that?" Elara said. "Old. It was the Alpha's mother's. He asked me to give it to you. Don't lose it." Elara touched it with one finger. The stone did not warm. That was interesting, she thought. Everything else warmed now. Her whole body was running a fever that only she could feel. This stone stayed cold, and when she brushed it, the markings on her arm, now reaching up past her collarbone and ending in a thin black curl right at the base of her jaw, went briefly quiet. "It steadies them," Yarrow said, watching her. Whoever the Alpha's mother was, and she was a great deal of things none of us knew about until after she was dead, she was not a woman who liked her blood making decisions for her. Keep it on, love, especially in that hall. She knew. Knew what? That something like me was possible. Yarrow didn't answer for a long moment. "I think," she said slowly, "she knew you were going to happen, whether she lived to see it or not. Come, 8 bells is not long." The great hall of Stormhold was not a hall. It was a cathedral of a room, long and high-ceilinged, with a vaulted roof of black beams and narrow vertical windows set so high they threw only slivers of pale gray light down onto the stone floor. A long oak table ran down the center. At its head, a single chair of black wood with a high back. Along the sides, 12 chairs, 6 to each side. 12 of them were occupied. Elara stopped in the doorway without meaning to. Ronan was at her shoulder. He had come for her at the bell, dressed now in dark leathers and the same silver clasp at his throat, a long black coat over it all. He had looked at her for a beat when she came out of her rooms, his eyes going to the chain at her throat, and something had moved in his face that she didn't have a name for. Approval, maybe. Or something older than approval. He had not said a word about it. He said now under his breath in the doorway, "Breathe." She breathed. "Whatever they ask first," he said, "will be a test. Not the question, the timing. Don't rush. Let the silence be there. Silence is not your enemy in this room. Do you understand?" "Yes." "Walk with me." They walked. 24 pairs of eyes tracked them down the length of the hall. Elara kept her chin up. She kept her shoulders down and back the way Yarrow had pressed them into place before she had left the tower room. 2 warm palms against her shoulder blades, Yarrow saying quietly, "Like this, love. Not higher, not lower, just here, the way a queen stands who does not know yet that she is one." Garrett Holloway was seated 3 chairs down on the right in his red coat. He did not look at her. He was examining the rim of an empty cup as if it were very interesting. Ronan took the chair at the head. He did not sit immediately. He stood behind it and waited, and Elara, understanding without being told that he was waiting for her, took the chair at his immediate right hand, the chair that on any other day was Kyle's. Kale, she noticed, had moved 1 seat down. She sat. Ronan sat. The rest of the hall stayed standing until he had, which she had not known was a thing they did. Then they sat. There was a long, careful silence. "Alpha Vale," a woman's voice from the left side of the table, middle of the row, thin, silver-haired, iron-backed. "It has been 3 years since we have been summoned to Stormhold on short notice. You understand we have come a long way. I thank you for it, Lady Morwen. Do not thank us yet. Thank us when we leave satisfied." A murmur of dry agreement down the table. Ronan inclined his head, a millimeter. "You will of course want to speak to the girl," Morwen said. "She will be spoken to, not about. Alpha Vale, ask her what you wish to ask her. She is here. She is not a question you ask over her head." Another murmur. This one was not dry. It was a little sharper. Not all 12 of them liked that answer. Morwen's thin mouth moved. It was not quite a smile. She turned her gaze on Elara. Elara Thorn, Omega, of the Blackthorn Pack. Yes, lady. Speak up. Yes, lady. Louder. You were laid upon a settling stone in the Ridgefork Fields on the night of the Red Moon, by the will and word of Alpha Garrick Blackthorn. Yes, lady. Do you acknowledge that this was done lawfully? Ronan did not move. He had told her he would not speak unless he had to. She was on her own. I acknowledge, she said careful, that it was done. A beat. Morwen's thin brows went up a quarter inch. That is not what I asked. No, lady. Answer what I asked. Lady, I don't... She caught herself. Slower. Lady, I am not a scholar. I do not know the difference between a law that is on a page and a law that is in a practice. I know that my pack did what my pack did. I know I was not given a choice. I do not know what the word lawful means to 12 wolves who have ridden a great distance to decide a thing about me. I will answer truthfully every question I am asked, if you will answer me truthfully what your questions mean. A silence. It was not a short silence. She felt Ronan, beside her, do something very small with his breathing. It took her a second to understand what it was. He was trying not to react. He was trying not to turn his head and look at her. At the far end of the table, Garrett Holloway put his cup down. I like her, he said mildly. I like her very much. Please continue, Morwen. Morwen's mouth went flat. Elara Thorn, what is on your arm? I don't know, lady. You do not know? No, lady. When did it appear? On the stone, under the red moon, before the Alpha King came. Before, lady. Murmuring now, all along the table. A man in a gray-green coat near the end leaned forward. It was not given to her by Ronan Vale, then. No, Alpha, Elara said, nor awakened by him. No, Alpha. So this thing, whatever it is, was in her blood. Yes, Alpha. Put there by whom? Elara opened her mouth. Garrett Holloway, still apparently examining the rim of his cup, said, almost absently, Who was your mother, child? The whole hall went still. Ronan's head turned, just slightly, just enough that Elara could see, out of the corner of her eye, the line of his jaw. He had not expected the question to come from that direction. He had not expected it so fast. Elara's heart was beating in her throat. Don't say it as if it means nothing. My mother, she said, was Celine Thorn, before she was Thorn. I do not know, Alpha Holloway. You do not know. No, Alpha. My father never told me. The pack never told me. Whoever she was before she was my father's mate, she was not spoken of in Blackthorn. I grew up understanding that I was not to ask. And yet what, Alpha? And yet her blood was enough to put something on your arm that I have only ever seen on 2 people in my life, Elara Thorn, and both of them are buried in the hill above the east wing of my own hold. Do you understand what I am telling you? She did not. She understood that he was telling her something, and that it was big, and that the other 11 wolves at the table understood it too, and she didn't, and that was worse than being in the dark alone. Being in the dark with a room full of people who could all see. I do not understand, Alpha. No. Garrett's pale eyes finally lifted to hers. Ronan, you haven't told her. I did not know myself until last night. You will forgive me, Lord Holloway, if I do not find your certainty now entirely welcome, given that I had to stand in a kitchen doorway in my own hold this morning and hear from a servant that one of my council members had already spoken to my guest without permission. Ah, Garrett inclined his head, unrepentant. She told you then. Yarrow tells me everything. Yarrow is a treasure. Alpha, a word of advice. No. Get a new one. A thin ripple of something that was almost laughter went down the table, among the ones who were not afraid of Ronan. The ones who were afraid of him did not laugh. That was most of them. Ronan did not laugh. Lord Holloway, he said, you have made an inference. You will make it out loud. To this council, in front of the girl. You will not use it to frighten her in the dark. Those are not the rules of this hall. Alpha Vale, speak or sit down. Garrett sighed. He set the cup aside. He folded his hands on the table. Very well, he said. Elara Thorne, I'm going to say a name. I'm going to watch your face when I say it. I want you to know that I am doing this. I want you to know that what I learn from your face will be, to this council, at least half of what we decide about you today. Do you understand? Yes, Alpha. Celine Moore again. The hall went dead. Not quiet. Dead. The air did not move. No cup clinked. No coat rustled. She could hear, very faintly, someone at the far end of the table swallow. The name meant nothing to her. It meant nothing to her. She could feel her face. She could feel it being read. She could feel Garrett Holloway's pale blue eyes on her, and she could feel the other 11 pairs of eyes on her too, and she could feel Ronan's absolute knife-edge stillness beside her. And she knew, with a kind of sick certainty, that whatever the right reaction to this name was, she did not have it. She did the only thing she could think to do. She took the old advice. She said it as if she knew what it meant, even though she did not, especially because she did not. Alpha Holloway, she said, quiet and even. My mother's name is not something I will discuss in a room where 12 wolves are looking at my face. If the council wishes to discuss my mother, the council will discuss her with me, alone, or with the Alpha of Stormhold. Not in this hall, not today. Silence. It stretched. Then Garrett Holloway, very slowly, leaned back in his chair, and the corner of his old thin mouth moved. Oh, he said softly. Oh, Ronan. Ronan, she is very like her. Ronan did not move. Morwen's voice cut the air sharp as a knife. Lord Holloway, are you prepared to put this inference on the record? Not yet, Lady Morwen. Then, but I am prepared to say, Garrett said, calm, that the marks on that girl's arm are not Blackthorn. They are not Vale. They are not any of the 12 houses at this table. They are older than any of us. They belong to a line that, as far as the Council of 12 is concerned, went into the ground 63 years ago on the night of the Morrigan burning. And if one of them survived and hid in a Blackthorn longhouse and bred a daughter into an Omega bloodline so she would be overlooked, he stopped. He picked up his cup. He looked into it as if the cup had offended him. Then, he said, we are no longer deciding what to do with an Omega who lived through a settling. We are deciding what to do with the last surviving heir of a house that this council voted to erase, and I would very much like us to be certain before we vote a second time. A long moment. Then, Morwen, slow, precise. Alpha Vale, did you know? No. You brought her here knowing something. I brought her here knowing she was alive. I brought her here knowing she was mine to keep alive. I did not know whose daughter she was. I know now. The question is whether this council intends to finish a job it started 63 years ago, Lady Morwen. Because if it does, his voice did not rise. It went down instead, down into the low register that had rolled through the floorboards of Mara's cottage. Then I would like every wolf at this table to look at me and think very carefully before they open their mouths. Down the table a hand moved. A wolf Elara had not noticed before. Near the far end on the left, thin-faced and dark-haired with a puckered scar running through his upper lip. He stood up. He did not look at Ronan. He looked at her. Alpha Vale, with respect. Sit down, Morrow. Alpha, I will not sit down. This council has heard only the old man's reading of an old name. I do not accept it. I do not accept that a girl scrubbing pots in a Blackthorn kitchen is the heir of a line that we... Morrow, sit down. Alpha, she cannot be who Holloway says she is. It is impossible. The Morrigan line was... And the woman 2 seats down from Morrow stood up also. A broad wolf with iron-streaked braids, and her hand was moving to her belt, and Elara saw it moving, and she felt Ronan, beside her, see it moving too, and Ronan's hand went under the edge of the table. The door to the hall slammed open. A man, bleeding, ran into the room. It was a boy, really. Maybe 17, one of the gatehouse runners, his left sleeve torn open to the shoulder and a long red cut down the side of his neck. He had run up the full length of the east wing in a clean panic. He was gasping. Cale was half out of his chair before the boy had finished crossing the hall. Alpha, the boy choked. Alpha, the south gate. There are wolves, Alpha, at the south gate. How many? 40, Alpha. Maybe, maybe more. They came out of the tree line at once. They they had the blackthorn banner, Alpha, but there were other banners too I saw. I saw iron maw colors. I saw Elara's hand went cold around the arm of the chair. And Alpha, there is a wolf at the front. He says he will not parley with anyone but you. He says he knows you are holding his daughter. The hall went still in a different way now. Elara felt every eye in the room come back to her. Her ears were roaring. Boy, Ronan said. Calm, too calm. The wolf at the front. Describe him. Older Alpha, gray in his beard, thick through the shoulders, a scar across his jaw. He is on a gray horse. It wasn't her father. Kellen Thorne rode a brown horse. Kellen Thorne had no scar across his jaw. Kellen Thorne was nothing but a thin, stooped man who had turned his face away from her on a stone slab under a lantern, and the wolf the boy was describing was not him. She said, and her voice came out thin and not hers, "That's Alpha Garrick." The boy looked at her. He blinked. "No, miss," he said. "No. I know Alpha Garrick, miss. I saw him at the council meet last winter. This isn't him. This is another one. This one says his name is Maddox. Alpha Maddox. He says he's your—" The boy broke off, swallowed, looked helplessly at Ronan. "He says he's her father, Alpha, her real one." Elara's hand clamped so hard on the arm of the chair that the wood creaked. Down the table, Garrett Holloway, very slowly, set his cup down, and this time he was not smiling at all. "Ah," he said, flat. "Then it is true." Ronan was already standing. He was moving. He was halfway down the hall before Cale had finished calling for the gate master. He stopped, once, at the threshold of the door, and he turned. And for a second, just a second, his iron gold eyes found her across the length of the long room and held her. "Do not leave this hall," he said. "Ronan, Elara, do not leave this hall." And then he was gone, and the door was banging shut behind him. And Elara Thorne, Elara Morrigan, if a red-coated alpha and a bleeding boy were both telling the truth, sat in a chair that was not her chair, at a table full of old wolves who had just been told that the girl they were going to decide about was the daughter of a father she had never met, under the banner of a house she had never heard of, and her hand on the cold pendant at her throat was the only thing keeping the old thing under her ribs from tearing itself up and out through her teeth. Outside the high windows, far below, she heard a horn. Long, low, close. The south gate had started to open. The horn went again before the first echo had died, and this time it was answered from inside the wall. 2 short notes from the Stormhold gatehouse. The kind of answer that was not a greeting. The kind that meant, "We see you." Elara did not move out of her chair. Her hand was still on the cold pendant. Her other hand was still locked on the carved arm of Cale's chair, and she could feel her fingernails digging into the oak, and she made herself loosen them, one at a time, because the old wolves at the table were watching her do it, and she was not going to give them her hands shaking. "Child," it was Garrett Holloway. He had not stood up. "Lord Holloway, look at me." She looked at him. "Do you know the name Maddox Morrigan?" "No." "No? I have never heard it in my life until a boy said it 2 minutes ago. I will tell you, Alpha Holloway, and I will tell the whole table, that I did not know the name Morrigan until you said it, and I do not know if whatever that boy is seeing at the south gate is my father or a wolf who wants to use me to open this gate, and the fact that you seem to know something about it makes me want to ask you, very politely, what else you are not telling me." A thin silence. Morwen from the left side said dryly, "She is not slow, at least." "No," Garrett said. "She is not slow. Alpha Vale left her in this room." "He did." "Then we are her keepers for the moment." "We are." "Then I suggest," Morwen said, carefully setting her palms flat on the table, "that we act like it. Lord Holloway, speak." "The council has just been told that the wolf at our south gate is a Morrigan Alpha alive in the world. If that is true, then this council has made a mistake that is 63 years old, and we have 7 minutes before the Alpha King comes back into this hall and decides what to do with our mistake. Speak quickly." Garrett looked at Elara for a long beat. Then, for the first time that morning, he looked tired. 63 years ago," he said, This council voted to end the Morrigan line. It was not a unanimous vote. I was not yet in my father's chair. I watched the vote. I watched my father cast his against. We lost by 2 votes. The Morrigan hold was burned in a single night. The reason given was that the line carried what we called, in those days, a sickness of the blood. A trait. Something that ran in their daughters more than their sons. Something that, when it was permitted to grow, made them difficult to kill, difficult to control, difficult to place in any pack's hierarchy. He paused. Difficult to own. That was the word my father used. Difficult to own. Elara did not breathe. 11 Morrigans died in the hold that night, Garrett went on. 2 were unaccounted for afterward. One was a young male, Maddox. The other was his younger sister, their mother. Celine, Elara said. Yes. You knew. I suspected, child. I did not know until you pulled your arm out of my hand last night. You burned my mother's house. The council burned your mother's house. I voted against it, for whatever that is worth to you. Nothing, Elara said. Calm. It is worth nothing to me. I did not expect it to be. Morwen's thin voice cut back in. Lord Holloway, if Maddox Morrigan is at that gate, and he is claiming this girl as his daughter, then the question before us is no longer whether she lives. It is whether she goes to him, or stays here, or leaves this hold under our banner. Not ours, Garrett said softly. Never ours. Then his. Alpha Vale's. We cannot pretend we are not in the middle of that decision, Morwen. The moment Vale walks back into this room and says she is under his banner in front of us, this council is implicated in whatever comes next. We were implicated, Garrett said, the moment we sat down at this table. The door at the far end of the hall slammed open again. Not Ronan this time. Cale. He had a sword on his hip that had not been there during the council meeting, and a second man behind him, a younger officer in the leather of the gate watch. And Cale stopped at the threshold and did not enter. Elara Thorne. Yes, Alpha Cale. The Alpha King requests you, not in the hall, on the south wall. Morwen was on her feet instantly. Alpha Cale, the council has not... The Alpha King's request was to the girl, Lady Morwen, not to the council. That is not... It is, today. Elara stood up. She did not know she was going to stand up until she was. The pendant at her throat was a hard, cold spot in a body that was otherwise on fire, and every old wolf at the table was looking at her, and the markings on her arm had climbed up the side of her neck, and she could feel them moving now, even under the pendant, restless, the way a dog pulls at a short leash. Child, Garrett said quietly. A word. I don't have time for your words, Alpha. One word. Then you go. She stopped. She did not sit back down. She turned her head just enough that she could see him. Speak. If the man at that gate is your father, Garrett said, he will tell you 3 things. He will tell you he loves you. He will tell you he never stopped looking for you. And he will tell you that you belong with him, not with the Alpha King of the Northern Reach. He will mean the first 2, child. He will mean them with his whole chest. He will probably cry. And the third will be as true for him as the first 2. None of that will make it safe for you to walk out of this hold with him. Do you understand what I am saying? No? Then listen again. A Morrigan daughter who does not know what she is the most valuable object on this continent. A Morrigan daughter who is claimed by a surviving Morrigan father is not an heir child. She is a weapon. Do you hear me now? She heard him. She hated that she heard him. I hear you. Good. Go. She went. The south wall of Stormhold was a long, ridged spine of gray stone 30 feet above the ground, and the wind on it hit her in the face the second she came through the tower door. Cold, wet, smelling of pine sap and old snow off the lake. She had to grab for the coping stones to keep her hood from going backward over her head. Ronan was at the parapet. He was not alone. Cale had already sent 4 Vale fighters up with him, and they were spread along the wall to either side with their hands not yet on their weapons, but close enough that no one watching from below would miss it. There were other wolves on the wall, too. The Stormhold watchmen, 6 of them on this stretch, 2 with crossbows already laid across the coping and the bolts not yet knocked, but lined up in their hands. Below, On the road that ran up from the tree line to the south gate, maybe 80 feet out, horses. Elara's mouth went dry. Not 40 wolves, closer to 60. She could see the blackthorn colors, dark green and black, on the rear rank. She could see the iron maw banner, a hammer crossed over a bone, on the left flank. She could also see, dead center at the front, a banner she had never seen in her life, a black field with a pale, ragged white crescent on it, curved like a claw, and a small silver star inside the curve. A single rider was 40 paces ahead of the others, on a big gray horse, older, thick-shouldered, gray-bearded, a long dark coat, no weapon drawn. She stopped 3 feet short of Ronan at the parapet. "That's the banner," she said quietly. "That is the banner," Ronan said without turning his head. "Is that what it was?" "More again." "It was. The last time I saw it flown was when I was 4 years old. You remember. I remember my father swearing at it across a table." She came another step up to the parapet. She did not put her hands on the stone. She did not trust her hands. "Alpha Vale." The rider below did not shout it. He said it at a normal volume, and the wind carried it up the wall to them like he had meant it to, which meant he was a wolf who knew how to speak across a distance without losing his voice doing it. "Alpha more again," Ronan said. Same volume, same calm. "You know me then." "I know your banner. I do not know you, Alpha. I was very small the last time your house was standing." "I know. You have brought other colors to my gate." "I have." "Explain them to me." Below, the gray-haired rider swung down off his horse, slowly, both hands where Ronan could see them. He walked 3 paces forward. He stopped. "The colors behind me are not mine. I have no house of my own anymore, Alpha Vale. You know this." "I do." "The Blackthorn Lord wanted his property back. I offered him a deal. I would ride to your gate and ask you to give her up. He would ride behind me in case you said no. And the Iron Maw. Alpha Kale Iron Maw was prepared to fight Blackthorn over the silver mines 4 days ago. Alpha Garrick offered him the mines and the girl both if he would come north with him instead. That is the Blackthorn Lord's negotiating style. I did not design it." "I see. I will tell you plainly, Alpha Vale. I am not here with them. I am here in front of them. If you had sent a rider out of this gate to me alone, I would have told him what I am about to tell you." "Tell me then." "I do not want my daughter to go with the Blackthorns, under any banner, for any reason, on any night." "Then why are you here with them?" "Because they were going north with or without me, and I was not going to let them come up to this wall without a Morrigan in front of them to negotiate her out. That is the best I can do today, Alpha Vile. I am sorry, it is not better." Ronan was quiet. Elara felt her own breath getting shallow. She was gripping the inside pocket of her coat with one hand, and she did not remember putting her hand there. Her other hand had, of its own accord, come up to the pendant at her throat. The gray-bearded wolf below tilted his chin up. He was looking past Ronan now. "Elara." "Yes." "Step where I can see you." "Don't," Ronan said, quietly to her. "Not yet." "Ronan, Not yet." "Elara, listen to me. He has not come alone. That is the first thing any alpha notices. What he said is a good speech. It may even be true. But he is here with 60 wolves at his back, and he is asking you to step to a wall. Don't." "Alpha Vale," the gray wolf said. "I have heard you. I have heard what you said to her. It is sound advice. I will give her mine. Elara, do not step to the wall. Not until I have told you the thing that will tell you who I am." Ronan's head turned a 1/4 inch. "Tell me then," the wolf below said. "From here, if there is any part of your mother I remembered correctly, she would have told you one thing about me. Before she died, she would have written it. She would have sewn it somewhere. She would have put it into a cook, a midwife, a neighbor, anyone she thought you might grow up near. A word, Elara. Not my name, not the family name. A word that only you and I would know." Elara's mouth was dry. "There is no word," she said. "Nobody ever told me anything. I didn't know my mother's name was Morrigan until today." The wolf below closed his eyes. "Ah," he said, quietly, to the wind, to himself. "Ah, Celine." He opened his eyes. He looked up at her again, and his face, for 1 second, was not the face of an alpha with 60 wolves at his back. It was the face of a man who had been carrying something for a very long time and had just realized, in front of a stone wall, that he was going to have to keep carrying it. "Then I will say it to you now," he said, "and you will know because your blood will know. Skybone. Do you hear me, Elara? Skybone. It is an old word. It is the word your grandmother used for the dark pendant that should, if everyone who loved your mother did their job, be hanging around your throat at this moment." Her hand was already on it. Under her palm, the pendant went, for the first time, warm. Not hot. Warm. The markings on her arm, climbing up her neck, flared once, like a breath going in sharply, and then went very still. Ronan saw it. Of course he saw it. He had turned his head a full degree to watch her, and his eyes were on her hand at her throat, and he said, very low, only for her, "Steady." "He's telling the truth." "Part of the truth, Elara." "Ronan, I said part of the truth." She looked at him, iron in his eyes, gold under it, that small hard line at the corner of his mouth. "The pendant," she said. "I know. You knew." "I knew it was my mother's. I did not know whose before her." "How long have you known whose it used to be?" "A beat." "Since last night." She looked back down at the gray wolf in the road. "Alpha Morrigan. Elara." "I believe," she said carefully, "that you are who you say you are. I do not believe you have come alone to help me. I came as alone as I could. That is not the same. It is not. What do you want?" The wolf below took a breath. She saw his chest move 60 feet away. "I want you off that wall and onto a horse and 100 miles from here by nightfall," he said. "I want you with me, in a hold I have been rebuilding for 22 years, with wolves who were sworn to your grandmother before she died, and I want to teach you what is inside you before it teaches itself, because it is going to teach itself soon, and you will not survive the lesson if no one has ever held your hand through it. That is what I want, Elara. That is all I want. I have nothing else to want. And the blackthorns will try to take you from me 3 miles down the road. I know. I will lose wolves in that fight. I will probably lose most of them. I do not care. I will lose them, if you come. And if I don't?" He was silent a long moment. "Then I will turn around," he said, "and I will ride back down this road, and I will take a spear through my back from Garrick Blackthorn the moment we are past the tree line, because that is the deal he made with me to bring me here. And I will die knowing that my daughter is alive and in the hold of a wolf who at least knows what she is. I can die with that. It is not nothing." Ronan beside her did not move. Elara's throat had closed. "Alpha Morrigan." "Yes. How many of the wolves behind you know who you are?" "All of them." "How many would follow you instead of Garrick if you turned on him right now?" He actually laughed. It was a short, tired, dry laugh. "Clever," he said. "Very clever. Like her. Elara. Half. Maybe a third. My own wolves are in the rear ranks. 11 of them. There is no version of this where I turn on him right now and we all walk away. I have thought about it every hour for 3 days. If there were such a version, I would have taken it. And if I stay here, then Blackthorn has ridden 3 days for nothing, and in a pack like Blackthorn, that is a thing an alpha does not survive. So there will be a fight on this road, today, whether you come with me or not. The only thing you decide standing up there is what color banner you ride out from under, or whether you ride at all." Elara closed her eyes. She thought very hard of a spider in the corner of a shed. She thought very hard of a kitchen porch in gray rain. She thought very hard of a cold rag wrung over her face. She opened her eyes. She looked at Ronan. "I know what you told me," she said, "about not leaving the hall. I know what you told me about the road. I know you don't want me to step to this wall. I don't. I'm going to anyway." "Elara, not to go to him. Listen." "Ronan, listen to me. Not to go to him. I know what Holloway said. I am not stupid. I am not going to walk out of your gate and get on his horse and disappear into a story somebody else is writing about me. That is not what I'm about to do. Do you trust me to do what I'm about to do?" A muscle in his jaw moved. "I trust you," he said. "To be braver then is good for you. Then let me." He looked at her, iron gold, level. For a long second, he was not the alpha king of the Northern Reach. He was a tall, tired man at a parapet who had just been asked to let a girl he had pulled off a stone walk up to an edge he could not stand in front of. And he did the hardest thing she had ever seen a man do. He stepped half a pace back. "Go," he said. She stepped to the wall. She did not put her hands on the stone. She put one hand on the pendant at her throat and the other at her side, and the wind came up across her face and pushed her hood all the way back off her head. And down below in the road, Maddox Morrigain saw her properly for the first time, and his face did something she was going to think about for a long time. He did not cry. Garrett had said he would. He didn't. He just looked. "Hello," he said, quietly. The wind carried it. "Hello. You look like her." "I don't know what she looked like." "I know you don't," she breathed. "Alpha Morrigain." "Maddox." "I am not coming down." A short silence. "I thought you might not. I'm not coming down because I do not know you. I am not coming down because the wolves behind you are not yours. I am not coming down because the wolves behind them are the wolves that laid me on a stone 4 nights ago. And I am not getting on a horse with any man who rode up this road with them at his back, even if half his blood is the same as mine." "Understood. I am also not coming down because of something the redcoat in the hall told me this morning. He said if you came, you would tell me 3 things. He said 2 of them would be true, and 1 of them would be a trap. He did not tell me which." Maddox Morrigain's mouth moved. It was not a smile. "Garrett Holloway," he said. "Still alive." "Still alive." "He would know." "Yes." "And you believed him." "I believe anyone who tells me something useful until I have a reason not to. You are not giving me a reason not to yet, so I am not coming down." "What are you doing instead?" She did not know, until she did. It came to her the way the cold had come up through the stone on the settling ground, from underneath, without asking permission, all at once. The markings on her arm and her neck went, for a 3rd time, very hot. The pendant at her throat went warm under her palm. The thing under her ribs, the old thing, the thing Yarrow had told her last night was going to want to come out, opened its eyes all the way. She looked down at the road. "Alpha Garrick Blackthorne," she said. Her voice came out of her differently this time. Not louder, heavier, the way Ronan's had in Mara's courtyard. A voice that rolled over the wind instead of fighting it, and rode the wind down onto the road, and settled there, and sat on every wolf in that column. She saw the wolves in the rear twitch. "Alpha Garrick Blackthorne, come forward." Nobody moved for a second. Then, from deep in the Blackthorne line, a horse pushed its way out. A big brown war horse, and on top of it a wolf she had known her whole life. The thick neck, the gray-streaked beard, the cold lake-water eyes. Alpha Garrick. He came forward past the iron maw line, past the front of the Blackthorne rank, and he stopped 10 paces behind Maddox. He was furious. She could see that even from 60 feet up. He had been expecting to be invited forward to negotiate. He had not been expecting to be summoned forward by a wolf he had left on a stone 4 nights ago, in a voice he knew very well he had never taught her to use. "Alpha," she said, and she would not call him my Alpha, not ever again. "You have brought 58 wolves to a gate that is not your gate, under a banner that is not your banner, and you have hidden behind a man whose house your grandfather helped burn. I do not say this to shame you. I say this so that every wolf behind you knows who they have been following this morning. Do you deny any part of it?" Garrick's jaw worked. "I do not take questions from an Omega," he said. It was the wrong answer. He knew it was the wrong answer the second it was out of his mouth. She saw him know it. She saw the 2 iron maw riders at his flank not quite glance at each other. She saw, in the second rank of his own column, a young beta she had last seen as a skinny boy in the kitchens, Wren, who had thrown pine needles at her face, flinch as if something had hit him. She said, still in the voice that was not her normal voice, "I am not an Omega." A murmur down the column. It started in the iron maw ranks and spread backward. "You are not a Morrigan either," Garrick snapped. "You are a Thorn. Your father is Kellen Thorn, who is 3 wolves back in my own line, and who will ride with me when this is over, and no child of Kellen Thorn has ever born." "My father," she said, "rode you north to sell me. Is he in this column?" Garrick did not answer. Which was the answer? "Come forward, Kellen Thorn," she said. No one moved in the Blackthorne line for a long, long moment. Then, slowly, so slowly she almost could not watch, a thin, stooped wolf in the second rank nudged his horse forward. A brown horse, a man she had seen every day of her life, from a distance, never close. He stopped behind Garrick. He did not look up at the wall. He could not look up at the wall. "Father," she said, clear, flat, loud. He looked up. He was crying. She had not expected it. She had expected him to be pale and blank and small, the way he had been on the stone, and instead his face was wet all down the front, and his mouth was open like a man who had been holding a breath for 19 years, and she understood, with a small sharp twist that surprised her, that he was relieved. That some part of him had wanted this particular sentence pronounced on his head for a very long time. "Father, I'm going to ask you a question. You're going to answer it. Every wolf in this column is going to hear you answer it. Do you understand me?" "Elara," he said, broken. "Elara, who was my mother?" A silence. "Selene," he whispered. "Selene what?" "Morrigan." A low, long ripple all the way down the column. Louder. "Morrigan!" It came out of him torn. "Selene Morrigan. She was a Morrigan. She hid in our pack. I knew. I married her to hide her. She told me what she was. She made me swear not to tell you. I swore. I kept it. Elara, I kept it." "You kept it," she said, "by laying me on a stone." You laid me on a stone." "Elara, you laid me on a stone, and then you rode behind this wolf," she pointed, one bare finger at Garrick Blackthorne, "to take me back. That is what you did with what my mother made you swear." Her father's head went down. His shoulders started to shake. She did not feel sorry for him. That was the part that surprised her most of all. In the kitchens, for 19 years, there had been one thing she had secretly thought. If he would just, once, come to her door at night, she would forgive him. If he would just once cry. She had practiced the forgiving in her head. She had been ready with it her whole life. She looked down at him now, and there was nothing in her for him. Not hate. Not love. The space where the forgiving was supposed to live was just a flat, empty floor, and the wind went across it, and it did not pick anything up. "Alpha Garrick," she said. She did not look away from her father. Did my father tell you what my mother was?" Did he tell you?" "Yes." "When?" The day before the settling." Another ripple down at the column. This one was different. This one had some anger in it, because the wolves in the column had not known, because the wolves in the column had believed they were sacrificing a nothing girl to buy a battle. Not a Morrigan daughter, under the old law, offered on a stone under a red moon by wolves who had known, the day before, exactly what blood they were spending. "Alpha Garrick, why did you lay me on the stone if you knew what I was?" Why? Because if you died on the stone, the thing in your blood would go into the ground, and the ground would fight for us, and the iron maw would be slaughtered in the river, and Blackthorne would have the mines, and I would not have to be the alpha of a pack that was starving through the winter because of... He stopped. "Because of what?" His mouth worked. "Because of what?" "Because of a Morrigan we had been sheltering for 30 years without knowing," he spat. "Because your mother and your father and whatever old woman hid her in my kitchens cost me 200 wolves in a winter campaign 30 years ago, when her kin ran across our hunting grounds and the iron maw followed them, and we paid for that fight in meat for 10 seasons. Because my pack has been paying a Morrigan debt it did not know it was carrying since before you were born. Because somebody was going to pay it back. So you laid me on a stone. Yes. To get the mines. Yes. And to pay a debt my mother owed. Yes. She breathed out. "Alpha Garrick Blackthorne," she said, "in front of every wolf in this column, in front of every wolf on this wall, in front of the Alpha King of the Northern Reach and the Council of 12 that rode into his hold this morning, you have just said, out loud, that you laid a daughter of the Morrigan line on a settling stone under a red moon, knowing what she was, to pay a debt you believed her mother had caused. Do you understand what you have just said?" The old laws are very specific about this. Maddox Morrigan, still standing between them on foot, had gone very still. Ronan, on the parapet behind her, had gone very still. Garrett Holloway, she did not have to turn to know it, had almost certainly come up onto the wall by now with his thin red coat flapping, and was standing somewhere at her back with a face like a man watching a trial he had waited 63 years to see. "The old laws," she said, "say that any wolf who lays a Morrigan daughter on a stone under the red moon, knowing her blood, has forfeited his pack, his name, his line, and any wolf under his banner who knew and did not stop him shares the forfeit. Is this correct, Alpha Holloway?" "It is correct," Garrett said from somewhere behind her shoulder. He had come up. She had been right. "It is very old law. It has not been invoked in 4 generations, but it is correct." "Alpha Garrick." Alpha Garrick. "Yes." "You have no pack. As of this moment, as of this road, you have no pack. The wolves behind you are no longer your wolves. They are wolves standing on a road behind a man who has no name. Do any of them wish to remain standing on that road?" The silence was absolute. And then, slowly, one at a time, beginning with a tall, thin blackthorn beta at the back of the column, whose face she did not even recognize, wolves started to turn their horses. Not all of them, not even most of them, but enough. 15, 20. The young beta wren, who had thrown pine needles at her, walked his horse out of the column and into the open space of the road, and he did not ride up to the wall, and he did not ride away. He just stopped, sitting, in the middle of the road, staring at his own hands on his reins. Torin did the same, and another beta she did not know. The Ironmaw wolves, her eyes flicked to them, and she caught, on a big red-bearded alpha at their front, Kale Ironmaw himself, the one who had been going to fight Blackthorn 4 days ago for the mines. She caught the very small nod he gave her. Not a bow, not a promise, an acknowledgement. He turned his horse too. He walked it backward 10 paces, then 20, pulling his wolves with him, not into the column, not against it, just out. By the time Kale Ironmaw was at the tree line, Alpha Garrick Blackthorn was sitting on a big brown warhorse in the middle of a road with 19 wolves behind him and 40 more behind those 19 who had no idea whose colors they were wearing anymore. And Maddox Morrigan, standing on the dirt between them all, looked up at his daughter on the wall, and he did not cry. But his shoulders came down, an inch, as if something he had been carrying for a very long time had just been taken off them. "Elara Morrigan," he said. "Maddox." "Hello? Hello? Will you come down now?" She thought about it for a long moment. "No," she said. "I will not come down today. You will ride back to your hold. You will take your 11 wolves. You will go slowly so that the wolves who have just left Garrick's column can peel off behind you and follow you home if they wish to. I will write to you. I will write to you before the next full moon. That is what I can give you today. I am sorry it is not more." Maddox was quiet. "It is more," he said finally, "than I came for. I came for you alive. You are alive. Take your time, Elara. I have waited 22 years. I can wait a little more." He turned. He walked back to his horse. He mounted and did not look at Garrick and did not look at her father and did not look at any of them. He just walked his gray horse past the broken column and down the road, and his 11 wolves peeled out and fell in behind him, and behind those, slowly, 6 more. Then 4. Then 2. Alpha Garrick Blackthorn sat alone on a road with 12 wolves who had not moved, and one thin weeping man who used to be the father of a daughter he had left on a stone. Elara turned away from the parapet. Her legs were shaking so hard she did not know how she was standing on them. Ronan caught her elbow. Not hard, just enough. "Inside," he said, quiet. "Inside, before they see it." She went. At the door of the tower, with her back to the road and her face to the dark stone stairwell going down, Garrett Holloway, who was standing there, red coat and all, pale blue eyes very wet, inclined his head to her. Not the way he had inclined it to Ronan. Not the way he had inclined it last night in the corridor. He bowed, not deeply, but not the little nod of a senior wolf to a lesser one either. It was the bow a council seat gave to someone the council had just finished deciding was above it. The other wolves on the wall behind him, one by one, did it too. Elara Morrigan, 19 years old, walked down the stairwell of the south tower on legs that did not belong to her, with the markings on her neck humming quiet under the chain at her throat. And at the bottom of the stairs she stopped, and she leaned her forehead for 1 second against the cold stone wall, and she allowed herself quietly to smile. She did not get to hold the smile for long. She heard the tower door above her open again before she had even taken her forehead off the stone. Boots on the stairs. 2 pairs. She straightened fast, wiped her face with the back of her wrist before she had time to notice that her face was wet. And by the time Kale came around the last turn of the stairwell, she was standing upright in the middle of the landing with her chin up. Alpha Kyle. Elara. The Alpha King is still on the wall. I know. He wants you in his study, not the hall. The study. He'll come find you. Kale, is fine, Elara. He is not a man who loses a standoff on his own wall in front of his own council. He is fine. Kale's tired green eyes moved over her face. He was, she was starting to see, the kind of beta who did not waste words, but also did not lie to make you feel better. You are not fine. No, she said. No, I'm not. Yarrow is in the study. She's brought hot water. You need to sit down before you fall down. I'm not, Elara. The thing you did on that wall. People don't do that. What you just did it was good. It was very good. But your body does not know that. Your body thinks you have just been in a fight. And in a little while your body is going to insist on being paid for it. Come. He did not offer her an arm. She was glad of that. She walked down the last flight on her own. The Alpha King's study was in the inner keep, up 2 flights, through a door plated with dark iron. A long room lined with books on 2 walls and maps on the 3rd. A fire, already high. A single dark wooden desk. 2 chairs. A wide window that looked north, not south, away from the road, out over the lake. Yarrow was there. She did not say a word when Elara came through the door. She just pushed a steaming wooden cup into her hand and a folded wool throw into her other hand and nodded at the chair nearest the fire. Elara sat. The cup warmed her palms. She drank. This time it was stronger. Salt, something bitter, a good crack of pepper, a heavy fat on top. She nearly gagged on the first sip. Yarrow watched her drink the whole thing anyway. Good, Yarrow said when the cup was empty. Now sit. Don't talk for a few minutes. Don't think either, if you can help it. Yarrow, Hush, love. Elara hushed. She sat with the throw over her knees and her boots on the edge of the hearth, and the fire cracked, and Yarrow moved around the room with small, soft sounds, and somewhere deep under her ribs the old thing, the Morrigan thing, she supposed she had to call it now, slowly, patiently lay back down. Not gone. Not asleep either. Just finished for the moment with what it had been doing. She did start to shake then. Her whole body did, teeth and all. She didn't try to stop it. Yarrow had said not to, without saying it. She just sat in the chair and shook, and after a while the shaking slowed down, and after a while more it stopped. The door opened. Ronan came in. He was alone. He had taken his long coat off, and there was a long dark streak down the side of his leather jerkin that she thought, for a bad second, was blood, and then realized was water from the parapet. Wind rain off the lake had hit him at some point while he had been out there arranging things with Kale. He looked at her in the chair. He looked at Yarrow. He jerked his chin at the door, very slightly. Yarrow gave him a dry look and left without a word. He closed the door behind her. He did not come to the chair. He went to the window instead and stood with his back to her, hands braced on the stone sill, his head down between his shoulders. He did not speak for a long minute. Ronan, give me a second. Okay. She gave him a second, then another. Then, quietly, are you angry? No. You're something. I'm something, he agreed. A short, humorless breath. I'm trying, Elara, to work out what I am before I say it out loud. Because I said a lot of things out loud in the last 4 days, and most of them were the right things at the right time, and this is a thing I do not want to say wrong. Take your time. He took his time. When he spoke again, he was still looking at the lake. I brought you here, he said, because I thought I could keep you alive through the first hard week of being whatever you were going to turn into. That was the plan. A week, quiet walls, good food, Yarrow, a scribe who could read old things. I was going to make you safe, Elara, for a week, and then I was going to sit you down in this chair and tell you what I thought you might be, carefully, and see if you could bear hearing it. Ronan, let me finish. Okay, I had 7 hours of safe. You had 7 hours of safe. A council member slipped a boy past my own guard and stood at your door in the middle of the night. And then they wrote letters. And then 12 old wolves rode through my gate before dawn. And then a father I did not know was alive came up my road with 60 wolves behind him. And then you—" He stopped. His shoulders moved once, not a laugh. "And then you walked to my parapet and unmade a pack in front of me, Elara, while I stood at your back like a spear carrier. Ronan, I didn't mean— I am not angry that you did it. That is what I am trying to tell you. I'm angry that I did not get to give you 7 days of being only Elara before you had to become Elara Morrigan in public. I am angry I could not buy you 1 week of not being watched. That is what I am. I am not angry at you. I am angry at the shape of it, at how fast it came, at the fact that somebody somewhere has spent 63 years waiting for a chance to put a Morrigan daughter back on a stone, and I got you off the first one by luck and a cloak, and the second one is already being built." Was she in such a chipati? She was quiet a long moment. "Ronan." "Yes." "Come here." He turned around. He came across the room and he stopped in front of her chair, and for the first time since he had picked her up off the settling stone, he hesitated. Not the calm pause of a man thinking, the real hesitation of a man who did not know what he was allowed to do. And she understood, with a small warm bolt, that she was going to have to be the one to decide, because he had decided on her behalf for as long as he was going to allow himself to. She reached up. She took his hand in both of hers. His palm was cold from the window. She put it down between her own hands in her lap and held it there. "I am not a second stone," she said, quietly. "Whatever is being built, I am not a second stone. Do you hear me? The wolf they are waiting for is not the one you brought into this keep. The wolf they are waiting for is the one I was 2 weeks ago. She is not here. That girl died under a red moon. You were there. You saw her die." He did not answer. "Ronan, did you see her die?" "I saw her die." "Then do not stand at that window like a man who has failed. You did not fail. You pulled me off a rock. I was not going to get off the rock without you. Do you understand?" "I understand." "Good. Sit down. You look worse than I do." The corner of his mouth moved. He pulled the other chair over and he sat in it, and he kept his hand where she had put it. His fingers were coming back to warmth very slowly. She watched him come back. She watched him let his shoulders down by inches. "Maddox," she said after a while. "What about him?" Was he telling the truth about rebuilding a hold? He is telling the truth about the hold. He has been rebuilding one on his mother's old ground for nearly 2 decades. Quiet. Small. No more than 60 wolves. He has been waiting for you, Elara. He did not know you were alive for sure until this morning, but he has been building the room you would sleep in since before you could walk. How do you know that? Because I have known of him for 6 years. Not as a Morrigan, as a quiet alpha on a hill, keeping to himself. I did not know who he was. I knew he was something, because quiet alphas on hills are not common. I had a man watching him for me, gently, at a distance. When I rode south to the river fields last week, it was because my man had sent me word that the quiet alpha on the hill had started moving. I did not know why. I did not know the red moon was coming. I did not know what a settling under that moon would pull up out of the ground. I followed a rumor, Elara. That was all. The rumor was him. And the rumor led me to you. Her breath caught a little. You knew my father existed before you knew I existed. Yes. And you didn't tell me. I didn't know you were his until Garrett Holloway said the name Morrigan in my hall this morning. I put it together the same moment the rest of you did. It just took me longer to stand up because I had to decide what to do before I did. And what did you decide to do? I decided, he said, to follow you out of the hall. Because I had already decided about you on the stone, and nothing in the hall was going to change that. She was quiet. Ronan. Yes. Maddox said he would teach me. I heard him. He said the thing in me is going to teach itself if no one holds my hand through it. He said I would not survive the lesson. I heard him. Is he right? Ronan took a breath. She watched him take it. She watched him choose to be honest. Yes, he said. He is almost certainly right. Yarrow and I can keep you alive for a while. I have a scribe who can read perhaps 1 word in 30 of what is written on your arm. We can buy you months, maybe a year, but what is inside you is older than my house and older than anyone in this hold. And if anyone alive on this side of the continent knows how to walk a Morrigan daughter through what is about to happen to her, it will be Maddox. That is the hard truth. So I have to go to him. You do not have to do anything. Ronan, you do not have to do anything. You have not had to do anything since I picked you up off that rock. That is the only promise I have ever made you. What I'm going to tell you is that if you decide on your own that you want to go to him, to learn, I will not stand at a parapet and make you choose me over him. She blinked. What are you saying? I am saying, he said, very carefully, that I will not be the second wolf who tries to own you. Your Blackthorn tried to own you. Your father tried to own you. The Council of 12 would like to own you. Maddox loves you and is going to want to own you also, even though he does not know it yet, because that is what men do who have loved their dead sisters for 22 years. I will not be a fourth wolf in that line, Elara. I refuse to be. If you tell me you want to go to him, I will take you there myself, and I will leave you on the threshold of his hold with my people, and I will ride home. That is the offer. Mess said tongue. Her throat was hurting. It was the strangest pain. She didn't have a word for it. And if I don't want to go? Then you will stay in this keep as long as you want, as a guest, as a woman, not as my anything, Elara, unless you decide later that you want to be something. Ronan, what? I'm going to be furious with you in about a minute once I work out how. That got a real laugh out of him, short, low, slightly stunned. I know, he said. I know you are. I can see it starting. You pulled me off a stone and rode me 3 days and put me in a tower and stood in front of 12 old wolves for me and nearly had a war in your own yard for me. And now you sit here and say I will not be the second wolf who tries to own you as if that is the thing you have to warn me about. Elara, let me finish. Yes, I am not a thing to be owned. I know this. I learned this last night in the hallway with Holloway, and I learned it again on the wall. Nobody owns me. That is not a problem you and I are going to have. That is a problem other men are going to have, with me, for the rest of my life. And you are the first man I have ever met who did not come at me like that. So I am going to ask you, once and only once, to stop preemptively apologizing for something you are not doing. All right. All right. All right. I'll stop. Thank you. Elara. Yes. What do you want? She looked at him. She looked at the fire. She looked at his hand in hers. I want to go to Maddox for a year, she said. Maybe 2. I want to learn what is in me from a man who loved my mother enough to survive 22 years waiting for me. I want to write to you every week if you will write to me. I want to come back here when I am finished learning, because this is the place I first slept under a roof that was not going to punish me. And that is a thing I am not going to forget. And I want to come back to a keep where the alpha has not replaced me with anyone, because I am going to be very jealous and very tired when I come back, and I will not have patience for anyone else in that chair. Is that fair? His mouth was doing the thing, the corner of it. That is fair. Good. Elara. Yes. One more thing. What? When you come back. Whenever you come back. However long it takes you. When you walk back through my gate. If you walk back through my gate as yourself, and not as a Morrigan heir looking for a political match, and not as a woman who has decided she owes me something, and not as any of those things, just as yourself. Ronan. Then we will talk, properly, about what we are. That is what I will wait for. I will not ask you anything else until then. Is that fair? That is fair. Good. She squeezed his hand. He squeezed back. For 1 second, the Alpha King of the Northern Reach and the last Morrigan daughter sat in a stone room by a fire and held hands, and did not say anything, and listened to a log crack, and were, both of them, almost unbearably tired. The council did not take it well. She had expected that. She had been sitting in the chair for 10 minutes after Ronan went back out into the keep, when Cale opened the door and said, in a voice that made it very clear he had already said several other things outside this room, Elara, they want 1 more hour. In the hall, Garrett is insisting. He says he will stand up and make the request publicly if you do not come down. Ronan has told him no 3 times. Tell Ronan yes. Kale's eyebrows went up. Are you certain? Yes. I want to be done with them, Kale. I want to walk out of this keep knowing exactly what they think of me, and I want them to have said it out loud in front of each other so they cannot take it back later. 1 hour, then I am done with them for a year. All right. She stood up. Her legs were steadier. She took the wool throw off her shoulders. She folded it. She put it on the chair. She adjusted the high collar of her charcoal coat and touched the pendant at her throat once, lightly, and walked past Kyle into the corridor. He stopped her at the door to the hall. Elara. Yes. You did not ask me what I thought of what you did on the wall. No, I didn't. I know why. You don't know me well enough to care yet. Fair. I will tell you anyway. I have served Ronan Vale for 11 years. I have watched him do some hard things well. I have watched him do some easy things badly. I have in 11 years watched exactly one other wolf make him look like the junior officer in his own yard, and that wolf was his mother, and she has been dead for 21 years. He paused. You do not need me to be impressed. You did not ask. But I want you to know, before you walk into that hall, that the second time I opened this door for you today, I did it on purpose. It was not Ronan's order. It was mine. I wanted them to see you come in a second time. I wanted them to have to stand up again. She looked at him. Thank you, Kale. Don't thank me. Just, when you come back in a year or 2 or however long, come back through my gate. Do not go around it. I would like to be the one who opens it. All right. Go, shot. They were all standing when she came in, every one of the 12. She had not asked for it, and Ronan had not asked for it. They had done it on their own, and none of them looked entirely happy about it, and a few of them looked like they had lost a small argument amongst themselves on the way to doing it. Morwen's thin mouth was pressed in a line. Morrow, the wolf with the scar on his lip, who had stood up earlier to say she could not possibly be a Morrigan, was looking straight at the table and not at her at all. Garrett Holloway was at his seat, and he was smiling very slightly. It was not a pleasant smile. It was the smile of a man who had watched something happen that he had been expecting, for the first time in several decades, to enjoy. Ronan was in his seat at the head of the table. Elara walked to Kale's chair. She did not sit. She stood behind it, with her hands resting lightly on its back because she had decided somewhere between the door of the study and the door of the hall that today, in this room, she was not going to sit on their schedule. Ronan, seeing her, also did not sit back down. He stood. So the 12 of them had to stay standing too. Lord Holloway, he said, you wanted the hour. Use it. Garrett inclined his head. Elara Morrigan, Alpha Holloway. You understand, I hope, that what occurred on the south wall today has consequences for this council, whether we like it or not. A pact has been unmade. By the old law. By a Morrigan daughter. In front of witnesses. Alpha Blackthorn's line is ended. His wolves are scattered. A settlement must be made for his lands and his people. That is your work, Alpha. Not mine. It is our work, partly because you made it ours. I did not make it anything. Your law made it something. I simply said the words out loud. I did not write them. A thin ripple down the table. Morwen did not quite smile. She came close. Fair, Garrett said. Fair. You will forgive an old wolf his habits of speech. The point remains. Decisions are going to be made about Blackthorn territory in the coming weeks. The Iron Maw will want some. The unclaimed wolves who rode out of that column will want a pact to be placed into. The council will have a hand in it all. My question to you, daughter of Selene, is this. Do you wish a hand in it also? No. No? No, Alpha. You understand what you are refusing. I understand that if I say yes, I become what you were afraid my grandmother's daughters would become. Somebody who sits in this room and decides things. I am not ready to be that. I may never be. I will not be it today. Then who decides Blackthorn, child? You do. The council decides Blackthorn. That is your job. If you do it badly, the wolves who survive that column will remember it, and 10 or 20 years from now, when their sons and daughters are looking for a banner to ride under, they will remember whether you were fair or whether you were greedy. That is all the oversight you need. You do not need mine. Garrett leaned back. He looked at Morwen. Morwen looked at Garrett. And your own status, Morwen said. My status. Will you take your mother's seat? Elara had not been expecting that question. She felt her fingers tighten on the back of Kale's chair. Ronan, at the head of the table, did not move, but she felt him not move in a way that told her he had not been expecting the question either. The Morrigan seat. There had been once, 63 years ago, a 13th chair in the Council of 12 that had been 12 only since the night the Morrigan house had gone down. Morwen was looking at her across the long oak table, and she was asking, in the careful voice of a senior council member, whether Elara intended to put a 13th chair back. She thought about it, honestly, for a longer moment than she knew she had. Not yet. Not yet. Not today. Not next year. Maybe not in 5 years. When I come back out of my father's hold, if I decide that a Morrigan chair in this room is a thing that is good for the Northern Reach, good for more wolves than it is bad for, then I may put it back. I'm not going to put it back this week. I'm not going to put it back so that any of you can spend the next decade worrying about which way I will vote. You will have a decade without me. Use it. Morwen slowly nodded. That, she said, is a Morrigan answer. Your grandmother would have given me that exact answer. Did you know my grandmother? I was a girl when she died. I met her twice. She terrified me. I don't doubt it. She would have liked you. I don't doubt that either. A thin, unwilling ripple of laughter along the table. Even Morrow, of the scar, snorted. Garrett raised one hand. The hall went quiet. Then, he said, with your permission, Elara Morrigani, and with the permission of the Alpha of this hold, I will put to this council the following statement, that the Morrigan line is not ended, that it was ended unjustly 63 years ago, that the vote of that year is hereby reviewed and found to have been in error, regardless of any single vote cast, that the surviving heirs of the Morrigan line, Maddox Morrigan and Elara Morrigan, are recognized as such by this council, in their persons and in their blood, that no wolf under any banner within the reach of this council shall raise a hand to them, or to wolves sworn to them, under penalty of forfeiting their own pack. Is this acceptable? He was not asking her, he was asking the table. Elara watched the hands go up. 12 hands. Not 11. Not 10. 12. Morrow was the last one. He did not meet her eyes when his hand went up. He did not have to. It was enough that his hand was in the air. Garrett let the hand sit for a long moment. Then he lowered his own. The rest lowered theirs. Unanimous, Morwen said, dry. For the first time in my memory. Enjoy it, Garrett. It will not happen again. I will enjoy it for a long time, Morwen, thank you. He turned to Elara. Welcome back, he said, quietly, just to her. To the world your grandmother should have died inside of. I am sorry we are 63 years late. You're not the one who was late, Alpha. No, but I sat at this table while they were. She did not answer. She did not need to. He did not need her to. Ronan, at the head of the table, said, We are done for today. And the Council of 12, for the second time in one morning, stood for her as she walked out of the hall. She left Stormhold at dawn 2 days later. She had thought she would have longer. She didn't want longer. The longer she stayed, the harder the leaving was going to get, and she had watched too many wolves in the kitchens of Blackthorn stretch small pain into long pain because they couldn't take the first cut. She was not going to do that. Yarrow packed her. It was a small bag, a change of clothes. The cold pendant, not on her throat now, but in a small silk pouch, because Yarrow had said you will want days when you let the markings talk to you, love, and days when you don't, and the pendant is how you choose. A wrapped bundle of the bark salve, a small hard loaf of black bread that had been baked that morning. A letter sealed with black wax that Ronan had written her the night before and that she had not opened, because it was for later, he said. For the hardest week at Maddox's hold, for a night when she was not sure she had made the right choice. Open it then, he had said, not before. She did not cry while Yarrow packed her. She cried a little when Yarrow hugged her, a fierce, short, one-armed hug, the kind of old woman's hug that did not last long because old women had work to do. And she cried again when Cale came up to her at the horse and clasped her forearm in the northern warrior's grip instead of a bow, because she had not expected it, and because it meant something she didn't quite have a word for. Ronan walked her down the last stretch to the courtyard himself. Maddox was there. He had come up to the keep the morning after the standoff with exactly 4 of his wolves, and he had sat in Ronan's study with her for 6 hours straight that first day, and done almost nothing except answer every single question she asked him as truthfully as he knew how. He had not pressed her. He had not told her he loved her. Garrett had been right about the first 2 things and wrong about that one. Maddox Morrigain was not a man who said "I love you" to a daughter he had just met. He was going to earn the saying of it, and they both knew that, and she liked him better for it. He was already mounted when she came down the steps. His 11 wolves, plus the 6 Blackthorn and 2 Ironmaw defectors who had attached themselves quietly to his banner in the last 2 days, were spread loose around the gate. He did not push her to hurry. He had learned, in 6 hours in a study, not to push her. Ronan walked her to her own horse, a dark bay mare Kale had chosen for her, because Kale had turned out to be the kind of beta who paid attention to whether a woman who had never really ridden a horse in her life needed a mount that was smart enough to make up for what she didn't know. Elara. Yes. The letter. I won't open it early. Good. Ronan. Yes. Don't come to me. He blinked. What? Don't come to me. In the year, or the 2 years. Whatever it takes. Don't come riding up to Maddox's hold one night because you heard something bad happened or because you couldn't sleep. I want to do this. I want to learn. I can't learn if I am listening for your horse. Write to me. Every week. I will write back every week. But don't come. Please. Promise me. Elara. Promise me. He looked at her for a long, long moment. All right? Promise me. I promise. Good. She put her foot in the stirrup. She got on the horse. She got on it badly, the way a woman gets on a horse when she is still learning, and the mare stepped sideways to help her, and Elara patted the mare's neck, self-conscious. Ronan was looking up at her with his hand on her knee, lightly, just resting there. Elara? Yes. If you ever decide, at any point in the next year or the next 5 or the next 10, that I was wrong to promise you this, if you ever decide that you want me on a horse coming up that road, you send a rider, one rider, with 1 word. That is all I need, 1 word. What word? You pick it. Pick it now. She thought. Skybone, she said. His face did something. All right. All right? All right, Skybone. 1 word. Any rider. Any hour. Any weather. I will not come before Elara. I will not come unless you send it. But if you send it, I will come, and nothing between here and your father's gate will stop me, and your father will not stop me either, and you and I both know that. Agreed. Agreed. Go. She did not cry this time. She had used up her crying at Yarrow's hug. She turned her horse. She walked it to the gate. Maddox fell in at her shoulder. His wolves fell in behind them. The Stormhold gate, the enormous iron-bound gate that had, Ronan had told her, never been forced, opened for them slowly, on its great counterweights, and the road spread out gray and wet and full of early light. She turned her horse once at the threshold. She looked back. Ronan was standing on the steps of his keep, Kale at his left shoulder, Yarrow at his right. Behind them, higher up, at one of the narrow windows of the great hall, she saw a red coat, Garrett Holloway. He had come back down to see her off, even though he had not said he would. Behind them, she was not sure she was seeing this correctly, and she did not ask later because some things you do not need confirmed. Behind them, on the inner curtain wall above the keep, she thought she saw a long line of people, more than she had expected. A great many more. Wolves from the hold, the kitchens, the stables, the weapons yard, the gatehouse. They were not shouting. They were not waving. They were just there, watching her go. She raised her hand once, at the gate. She did not know who it was to. All of them, maybe. Ronan, Yarrow, the thin boy who had run into the hall bleeding from the neck. Kale, the hold, whoever was still inside her, who had spent 19 years scrubbing pots in somebody else's kitchen and would never stand in that kitchen again. She turned her horse around. She rode. Oh, she would come back. Not in a year. In 2 years and 4 months, which was long enough that she had started to think, on some of the worst nights in Maddox's hold, that she had forgotten the exact color of the iron in Ronan's eyes, and short enough that she knew, when she came up the south road and saw the gate and felt the pendant in the pouch against her hip go warm for the first time in months, that she had not forgotten it at all. She would come back without a Morrigan banner over her head. That had been a decision. She would come back on the same bay mare, older now, with gray around the muzzle. She would come back with a small hard scar of her own across the back of her left hand, from a lesson with her father that had gone badly at the halfway mark. She would come back able to read almost every mark on her own skin. She would come back still not entirely sure whether she was going to put a 13th chair back in a hall 100 miles north of where she was standing. She would come back knowing that she did not need a chair to be what she was. And at the gate of Stormhold, on an ordinary afternoon in early spring, Cale would be the one who opened it, just as he had asked. He would nod at her as she came through. He would not bow. She would not want him to. And in the courtyard at the foot of the keep steps, there would be a tall, tired man in a black shirt with his sleeves pushed up to the elbow who had kept every promise he had made her, including the hard one, for the full 2 years and 4 months, and who would look at her as she got down off her horse the way he had looked at her on a stone under a red moon, as if he had, at long last, found the thing he had spent his life looking for, and as if he still could not quite believe that the thing had turned around and decided, of its own free will, to be found. But that was later. That morning, at the threshold of Stormhold's south gate, 19-year-old Elara Morrigan, who had been left on a rock to die by people who did not know her name, and had stood up off the rock, and had, by her own voice, in her own time, in her own way, unmade the pack that had left her there, rode out under a pale sky with her father at her shoulder and a fortress full of people watching her go. And it is true, what the old wolves say about wolves like her, in stories they tell quietly and not in council halls. The ones they throw away are the ones who come back to decide. The ones who ought to have stayed down and did not. The ones who learn, somewhere on a cold stone, that the worst night of a life is not always the end of a life. Sometimes it is the beginning of the only part that matters.